Well, just going through that time was the number 61 Rover that leads the Group A class. That's Jeff Allen. I would think one of the more disappointed drivers here today would be Ron Dixon, who was forced to retire the second Rover. For that story, let's go down now to Cullen Young.
Well, Mount Panorama is certainly taking its toll today, and one of the cars that's affected is the British entered Rover team. The Australian connection is Ron Dixon. Ron, you were driving the Rover this morning. What happened?
Well, originally, Cole, we thought that coming down into the cutting, we were running one behind the other, and I thought that I'd clipped that oil on the inside that was from the Masterton car. But when they got the car back here on closer inspection, they found that the axle had broken. So that's why it had thrown the tail of the car around on a very critical part of the circuit, and had just gone in and touched the tyre barrier.
You had a problem earlier in the week with a flat tyre in practice. Was this a carry-on for that?
Same tyre, actually. No, I don't think so. We put a new rear end in the car then, but I think it's just one of those things that's happened. But the car's out back circulating now, so we'll catch back up to be second outright in Class A. Well,
your other team car, Jeff Allen, is running well. They're leading Group A, so you must be happy with that situation.
Sure, we just hope that Moffat will be happy, that's all.
OK, that's Ron Dixon from the Rover team.
Back on the racetrack, and we have a good scrap going here with Alan Moffat in the number 42 car, tailing George Fury as they come up now to GTX Bend. They might be only separated by one car. Here's Moffat moving up on the inside of Fury. This will be a good scrap. Two small cars with plenty of power across the top of the mountain. And look at Moffat, a beautiful inside maneuver here to put the pressure on Fury. Fury responding though. This isn't over yet. Yes, it is. Moffat goes through on the inside. And moves up one more spot. Heading up to the top of the mountain. They'll come down towards Skyline shortly. Moffat in the second of the blue and white RX-7s.
And very quickly he's been able to put half a dozen car lengths between himself and the Nissan Bluebird.
And so the longer the day goes, the longer Moffat's legs get. The front of that one's had a small touch as well. Action's been fast and furious in the James Hardie 1000 in 1984. Moffat, of course, in this car because his owner's off and closed up for the day at the back of the pits. Out of action with trouble resulting from, he's got his hand out. I'm not quite sure why, but Moffat had the arm up.
I really don't think he was signalling to George Fury where to pass, but Fury getting closer going down the straight, and this is an interesting comparison of speed to the RX-7 rotary powered and turbo powered. George Fury goes to the outside as they race down to the crest and beneath the bridge. Here he comes. Yes, and Alan Moffat coming into the pit area. This will be a very, very interesting stop for the Moffat team down through the maze. And he has pit row number 1, so he hasn't got that far to go. Watch the quick stop. He's in. Well-drilled pit.
A couple of tanks of fuel going in. Clean the windscreen. The tyres are staying on.
Beautiful stop, that one. 16.68 seconds. 16.68 seconds. Lightning stop there from Alan Moffat, who comes through the pit area over the humps as though he was trying to set pole time for the Brazilian Grand Prix. So Moffat goes back out of the pits. He is certainly in the hunt for the James Hardie 1000 for 1984. More action to follow when we return to Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Welcome back to the James Hardie 1000 at Mount Panorama. Well, they've finally got the Roadways Commodore back out on the track again. And Steve Harrington, who got involved, whether he was clipped from behind and spun off and crashed into the wall. All that work back in the pit area, and Gryce is back out on the track again. No chance of winning it.
But he doesn't give up easy.
No, he's a survivor. He's a hard fighter. Things don't come easy to Alan Gryce in his motor racing. He fights for every victory.
He's had to drop in another radiator. Some substantial body work was done too, frantically at that. And I think they had problems with the petrol tank at the back as well.
Yeah, we had to put another one in, Mike.
So how does it feel, Alan, that realisation of all the work at Bathurst here for a week, qualifying well, and then all of a sudden your car doesn't come round the next lap?
It's a pretty tough game, this. But there's so much effort and...
Okay, we'll come back to Alan as he comes down now towards Forest Elbow. Yes, it can be a cruel old game, motorsport, can't it? However, you can expect Gryce will soldier on for the remainder of the day. Hurry up now on the tail here of the Camaro. Camaro breaking the air for him, but he has a problem here. He's got some slower cars coming up.
That's the Brian Thompson car that he's just passing, 22. No, he's not passing at all. Yes, he is.
He might, yes, he's got more horsepower. Coming down through the gears, left-hander. Once again at the end of the front straight at Murray's Corner.
Underneath the Hardie's bridge, on which is mounted the device which triggers the counter that you see right on his dashboard there.
The front of the car is a mess, isn't it?
Certainly is.
He's not far on the track behind Peter Brock at the moment. Brock just disappearing up there in the distance, but of course a long way down on actual laps.
Well, from Alan Gryce's car, back to Prince Leopold Von Bayern in the Group A BMW.
Negotiating the mountain a little more successfully today than he did when he arrived here last Wednesday and stacked it into the wall just off the top of Skyline, but he learned his lesson and learned it well. Denny Hulme came out and campaigned the car off the start this morning, and they're faring very well indeed in the Group A category, running in second place at the present time behind 61, the Rover entry with Jeff Alm and Armin Hahn. And His Royal Highness is more than holding his own at the present time with the Mount Panorama Circuit.
Well, you can expect to see BMW as one of the leading runners in Group A come January 1st, when Group A becomes Australia's national touring car category. So much development overseas. It wouldn't surprise me to see quite a number of internationals here for the major touring car races throughout 1985, and it's all really been made possible because of the category change up to Group A. Be able to identify a little more easily with the cars that you see on television contesting the touring car championships. Only some modifications are allowed, but certainly not the improvements and the modifications that are allowed on the Australian, what has been the Australian touring car Formula Group C.
We mentioned the Rover leading Group A, the BMW with the Prince at the wheel, second place in that category. Car 70 is running third, Cullen Bond and Alf Costanzo in the Alfa Romeo GTV6. Then car 72, Johnny Smith's Toyota Sprinter. 73, Bob Holden and Alexandra Surplus, also in a Sprinter. And of course, Alexandra, one of only two women drivers in the race today. Christine Gibson, the other one sharing the drive with Glenn Seaton in the little Nissan Turbo Exa.
It's Leopold Von Bayern making his way up the mountain amidst a gaggle of cars.
Prince Leopold Von Bayern, who took a little time to find his way around Mount Panorama when he first arrived here during the week. But Your Royal Highness, it's a different case today.
Just a moment, I'm in the hard part. I just call you back.
Okay, the hard part of the track, as you heard Prince Leopold say. We'll just hold it for a moment as he finds his way across the top here past Reed Park. The left-hander, around he comes to McPhillamy. On by the Castrol Tower, finds the end of Skyline, past the spot where he gave the wall a nudge on Wednesday. Coming down to the Dipper and the S's there through the Dipper. Oof. Already difficult.
I'm going to be on the straight.
Now we're on the straightaway now in a moment, coming down to Forest Elbow, and as we come out of Forest Elbow, Prince Leopold, how are you enjoying the James Hardie 1000?
Oh, I enjoy it very much. It's very much fun for me. At the moment, I'm feeling very happy. The car goes wonderful. We had in the first third, we had a trouble with the front wheel, but we changed that, and now the car is running beautifully. And I enjoy it. Now I know a little bit more about the track, and I think it's a great track here.
This is the first real opportunity for Australian viewers to see Group A cars in action. I think there's going to be a big future for this type of racing in Australia. Would you agree?
Certainly I agree, because I think production races are going to be more common.
Prince Leopold, when you go back to Europe, what will you be telling other drivers about this race?
Because I think the people can identify them much better with this kind of cars.
Will you be recommending that other European drivers come here for the James Hardie 1000?
Oh, that would be great. You know, I'm going to tell when I'm back in Germany, I'm going to tell them exactly how wonderful it is here.
Okay, we'll let you get on again with the difficult part of the circuit. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Prince Leopold Von Bayern, and as I said, he's come to grips with it pretty well.
I think he's enjoying himself. You'll notice in a moment just what the Australian Group C cars are all about too. Comes out of that corner and he's got a fellow in a red and white car. That usually means trouble. That means they're trying to pass you.
He's
Mount
gone.
Panorama, and he's gone. So as we pick up across the top of the mountain, the car's coming across here. The dealer team car has already gone through. And a marvellous plus for this race for His Royal Highness to be here as a motor racer.
He's done a fair bit of racing, 130 in his career, and top 5 most of those.
A regular campaigner at Le Mans, finished 4th there this year in the Warsteiner team, Porsche 956. And a whole new ball game, touring car racing in Australia. Will be hopefully during the next pit stop. A little shutter, the lens cover that we have there to stop the stones chipping. No sooner said than done. When at first you don't succeed, you just turn the windscreen wiper on with race cam. That clears the road out for you. If you're thinking about technology and television, don't let anyone, suppose sometimes they say it's easy to blow your own trumpet, but I'll blow it loud and clear for the engineering department of ATN Channel 7 in Sydney that had developed race cam back in 1979. This is a world first. Again, you see it exclusively in Australia. That's because this whole operation was put together by Australians. I suppose we'll have another American or a European network that'll be chasing us again, looking at another aspect of motorsports television. When you see it coming in on satellite from some other place in the world, you can remember it came to you and was devised by the crew at Channel 7. So Prince Leopold, following a couple of these Group C cars.
It's a big change in 20 years from 4 cameras and a black and white telecast, isn't it?
You're right. And I tell you what, this race is far from over, as you will discover when we return after a little tub down to Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
Tony Mulvihill and Brian Nightingale are in the sand trap in their Takiko RX-7, and they're there for good. Parked, they can go home, put their feet up.
Try and spin those tyres, and they just dig themselves a deeper hole. I'm afraid that sand is quite deep, so they're going nowhere.
I don't even think a wedge would help you there, Wilco.
My game's not that good.
Well, what a sad end to the James Hardie 1000. Buried there.
Ooh.
He's not upset much.
He got a big cheer from the crowd.
There's one thing that brings you back to earth at Mount Panorama, and that's the Australian race fans. You get out and demonstrate that you're really wild with yourself or your car, they'll bring you back to earth very quickly indeed.
They were running well too in 24th place, so it's a disappointment. Let's pick up now in car 44, and that's the checkered flag entry. The Ghostbusters, Peter McKay and Graham Moore.
As we mentioned earlier in the day, they had a rather unusual launch for their car earlier in the week, and they found themselves a haunted house and some Bloody Marys to drink.
They're in 17th position outright, and with 80 laps to go, they could be looking for a close-up finish here.
Well, entered, of course, by Checkered Flag magazine. Phil Christensen, one of Australia's top motoring journalists, finds himself in the role as a team proprietor at Mount Panorama, so his car is doing very, very well indeed.
Well, the Ghostbusters have been given the go-by there by Brian Thompson in the big thundering Chevy Camaro V8, and with that sort of power and those speeds, it's no wonder that race times have tumbled over the years here at Mount Panorama, and it's quite interesting, in fact, to just take a look at the way they've come down over the years.
Peter McKay will be able to write about this afterwards.
Take a look at this. Go back to the big wet of 74 when Johnny Goss won the race, and you can see the time was markedly slower. Then we had a rapid decline to the following year. There was a space there, 75, 77, where there was not much improvement at all, but since then it's been an improvement every year. That very big V, of course, was brought about by the shortened race won by Dick Johnson back in 81. Then we got back to a more realistic position in 82. But as you can see, if you forget that big drop there at the 120 laps, that gradual decline continues right from 78 through to 83.
Well, troubles in the pit area. And looking down into the engine bay is Gary Rogers, and sitting back in the car is Peter Jansen. Let's go to our pitmen.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, well, this is the second stop for Peter Jansen in the last 5 or 10 minutes. Obviously unscheduled, this one, Peter.
We're getting fuel starvation, and it comes in exactly as you get over the top of Pillarmead, which means you go right over the top without any power at all. I tell you what, it's quite exciting. And then when you get down into the braking area, she fades again. So, I mean, if that keeps up, you know, I'm a lover, not a fighter, and I don't want something to happen.
Well, for someone who was in about 10th position just a short time ago, you're taking this all philosophically.
Oh, well, let's face it, it's a sport. If you don't look at it that way, you want to go and blow your bloody brains out. What about Walkinshaw? He had his balls blown off right out here when he'd lost his clutch at the starting grid. At least I've had a bit of a run.
OK, Peter, thank you very much. It's back to you, Michael.
How do you beat the irrepressible Captain Jansen?
Well, a very refreshing attitude in professional sport. He's managing to enjoy himself even if his car isn't running as well as he'd like.
Well, I think Peter Jansen enjoys his racing. We don't see him running the touring car rounds, but he's a regular here at Mount Panorama at Bathurst each year.
On the track, 05, Peter Brock, dealer team Commodore up front ahead of Dick Johnson in the Falcon, car number 17, and the pair of them have got a lap on the third place getter, and that's George Fury in 15, the Nissan Bluebird, followed by Alan Jones in the Kmart number 8, Commodore, and then Alan Moffat in the second of the Moffat Mazda cars, number 42.
Well, that's updating for you our Castrol scoreboard, put together, of course, by Digital Computer Scoring. It would be lost without here today at Mount Panorama. I'll give you a running guide for positions 1 through 5, 6 through 10 in the 1984 Great Race.
still following Peter McKay and the Ghostbusters RX-7. Peter's a journalist, writes for several magazines. And he's making his way up the mountain now, and one of the Holden dealer team cars right behind him, but not for very long. Certainly the V8 Commodore will shoot past him pretty smartly. Jansen's still in the pits with the bonnet up.
That doesn't look good for them, and I think Colin Young is also waiting in the pits for us. And hopefully with Colin we'll have John Shepherd.
Thanks, Mike. Well, John Shepherd is with us. John, the garage area at Bathurst is busier than it's been for many years.
Well, it tends to happen as time goes by here. The cars do get knocked around fairly badly, and a lot of things happen which blokes don't have any control over, which we've seen all day long. The interesting thing that's starting to develop now is the tactics for what's going to happen for the rest of the race, because we've got Johnson, who's dropping back at the rate of perhaps 2 or 3 seconds a lap, or it's John French that's dropping back, obviously, from Peter Brock. And I just looked across at Dick Johnson a moment ago, and he gave me a bit of an eyebrows up sort of thing, as if what's he going to do about it. But his problem is he can't get back in the car yet, obviously, because he's got his problem with his driving time, so he's got to sit and watch that happen. And probably, as we said, we're going to have a driver change with Brock back to Perkins, so it'll develop as the day goes on. It should be great.
John, early in the race, both Peter Brock and Dick Johnson admitted that they may have made a slight error in the selection of tyre compounds. Is this going to turn into a tyre war before we see the checkered flag?
I think they've probably settled on their final decision now. Because the track was hotter than they thought it was going to be, they put the harder compound tyre on, which in fact wasn't a good decision, so now they've gone back to the soft compound. But I think they'll both settle on that and just keep on trucking, because the circuit is actually getting very slippery now, and they can do it. It won't knock the soft tyres around so much. So I think you'll find they'll settle on tyres, but the drama will be driver changing and fuel stops and so forth, and that's really where the fun's going to start.
Okay, as you can see from John Shepherd, tyres and fuel stops are going to be the important part of this race later on. And news just through that the Cullen Jones Commodore may have some rear brake pad problems. That's it from down in the pits. Back to Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Colin, and to John Shepherd. Across the top of the mountain, car number 47.
That car's familiar. The photograph of Brian Callahan's Falcon won the Great Race Photographic competition here as well.
It did so too. That's right, down in the cutting. At the wheel at the moment, a name that will be familiar to many of the oval track racing followers across Australasia, and that's Barry Graham. Second start here at Mount Panorama in the Callahan Pavers entry, car number 47. He's actually been responsible for the preparation of the car. Brian Callahan's been here for a few years, went from the ovals to touring car racing. They enjoy running this particular event. In fact, last year were well and truly on the pace at the middle stages of the race, and they are running 11th on the grid at the moment. So that's very, very respectable placing for them at this stage. They've been as high as 10th. Barry Graham of Sydney at the wheel, coming down under the Capri and almost into the top 10.
Well, we'll follow them under the Hardie Bridge and along Pitt Straight, and as we do so, we'll take a break and return for more action at Mount Panorama. We're in the roadways Commodore with Alan Gryce on Mount Panorama. And Alan, it hasn't been a great day.
No, you can see I'm a bit busy, and that's just in a straight line.
Well, what are your plans? You going to stay out there or not?
No, I'm going to do another lap and bring it in and put Steve in. He was in the car when the car hit the fence. It's a bit the same as when you fall off a horse when you're a young bloke. The sooner we get him back in the car and get him all used to it again, it won't affect him, won't worry him. We don't worry about things like that.
It's giving you handling problems, is it?
Yeah, it's like trying to juggle an open box of confetti. you can probably see where the steering wheel is. It shouldn't be there. And it's down the straights, the place that's interesting. Over those jumps, we haven't got our front spoiler on to keep the car down.
Well, right at the moment, Gryce, you're providing a lot of entertainment for viewers in New Zealand who've just rejoined our telecast.
Well, if you're still with us when we go down Conrod Straight, you'll see the front of the car lift right up in the air. The car actually two wheels for quite a bit on its back wheels because I haven't got the front air dam on, and we're doing about 160 mile an hour. And it's just trying to do a back somersault, but I'm pretty determined I'm not going to let it do that.
I guess it's been a sad way for you to say goodbye to Group C racing.
Yes, you can say that again. Although our boss has got a big Hardie in Harrington, I think he might decide to do one more before he tosses the hat into the ring. But we could do Sandown or Adelaide. This thing's understeering and it's ducking and diving and it's bump steering. I'm glad I haven't got it in my driving school. You watch this next, down near that tree, on the top of that crest, she takes off and floats along in the nose. It's quite a thrill.
Sure.
How'd you like to do that for a living? Here's another one.
It's all yours, mate. Well, listen, Alan Gryce, I know you've had a lot of hassles and a lot of problems out there today to get that car back on the road, and I want to thank you in all of that for having taken the time out to provide us with a great spectacle and some great commentary. Thanks a lot.
Okay, pleasure.
And updating the James Hardie 1000 in hour 4. Some of the highlights. The number 3, Gary Rogers, Peter Jansen car, running strongly in the top 10. Was back as far as about 15th, but Rogers doing a good job. Alan Gryce with problems explaining what had happened after Harrington had put the car into the boards. They had almost rebuilt the car in the pits inside of 1 hour. Cullen Bond continues to soldier on. The Alpha, car number 70, the Network Alpha, running superbly for its first appearance here at Mount Panorama in the Group A category. One of the smoothest pit stops, the Dick Johnson team. Dick Johnson coming in the car number 17 to hand over to the veteran and his long-term sidekick, John French. Johnson explained to John French how well the car was running, and French was out on the racetrack. While all this was happening, David Parsons in car number 25 was steadily making his progress forward in the field, and he had a lot of traffic. Using wide lines out of the corners while Peter Brock stands by while Larry Perkins juggles on 2 wheels to make it back into the pits in the 05 car and keep their lead. Perkins out, Brock in one of the fastest pit stops of the day, and out 31, 94 seconds. Trouble for Ken Matthews in the 19 car, blown tyre. Trouble also for the Bill O'Brien Everlast Falcon. The biggest problem, would it ever last? Back to the pits. While this was going on, car number 42 with Alan Moffat taking over from Greg Hansford. And the little Victorian is going after his 5th win. A lightning pit stop for Alan Moffat in 42 and back out onto the circuit in under 14 seconds. Count Leopold Von Bayern sets motor racing history. He's able to talk to viewers around the world what it feels like to run around Mount Panorama. And if the picture ever gets a little dim, the BMW has its own windscreen washer. Gillard, with problems, slams the door. He's out of the race because he's in the rough, and the captain explains this pit stop shouldn't be taking so long. Perhaps he needs more hired help.
We just saw in that update, Mike, the pit stop that put Peter Brock back in the 05 Commodore. When he rejoined the circuit, that was about 15 laps ago now. When he rejoined the circuit, his lead on second place getter Dick Johnson was 21 seconds. It is now 63 seconds. So Brock is really going hard in front. That's Steve Harrington getting back in the number 6 Roadways car. Alan Gryce, as he said, was going to send Harrington back out to cope with what he had engineered.
But the car's really not handling it all. I guess it's just for the experience for Steve Harrington. Giving the windscreen a bit of a wipe. And Steve will be so disappointed, but at least he's getting another run, albeit in a car that's handling not well at all. John Harvey standing by, waiting. Making sure those gloves are on nice and firmly.
Well, David Parsons has done a great job for the dealer team in his first appearance at Mount Panorama. Harvey tried to tell even some of the people in the background to step back. This is going to be a quick pit stop. The car, of course, running 6 at the moment. David Parsons at the wheel and Johnny Harvey to take over. Harvey, of course, a member of the winning trio that took out the James Hardie 1000 last year with Peter Brock and, of course, Larry Perkins. But the good news is Harvey is still out there, still motoring around in his own car. They're trying to give him an indication of how long before Parsons will arrive in the pit area. And we'll be able to indicate that to you very, very quickly, because the car should be on Conrod Straight on its approach to the pit area.
Provided they're nice and quick, they should be able to hang on to 6th place, which they have at the moment.
And
because they have a lap on Barry Lawrence's Commodore.
I don't think he's coming in this lap, is he?
No, he's going to do one more lap, David Parsons. I think John Harvey expected him that time.
In fact, Parsons has moved up a spot. Maybe that's why he didn't come in. He's a bit busy there. He's just given Alan Jones the slip and moved up another spot on the track.
Well, they've been making good forward progress.
That's Jones right in behind the dealer team car.
So as they head up Mountain Straight towards GTX Bend, we'll follow them. Moffat just ahead of them on the racetrack.
This could be
this is a good scrap. We're looking at the change of positions for 4th, 5th and 6th. Coming into the cutting, David Parsons. He's a great find, this young fella. Adapts so well to the team and so well to any circuit. Peter Jansen has certainly found 1 or 2 very talented co-drivers for his touring car efforts. The only problem is that all the good teams keep snipping them off him. So we would expect perhaps Parsons to come in the next time around.
Larry Perkins, of course, had a stint with the captain before going to the dealer team, and the same thing has happened with Parsons. But what a future this young man has got under the direction of Peter Brock and John Harvey and Larry Perkins. You couldn't get 3 more knowledgeable men in the motor racing industry to take you under their wing.
He's out there at the moment trying to stretch that buffer over the Jones car, and just ahead of him, of course, is 42 Alan Moffat. Now it's time for a driver change. Must be a moment of anguish having been able to pull back a lot of time on Moffat, then to have to blow it by going to the pits. But it has to be done.
this should be it. He'll make his way into the new entry to the pits.
There's Moffat going through the next shot. Yes, here comes David Parsons.
Spearing off to the left and through that tricky little part. It's only a very last-minute job that got this entry to the pits completed.
Getting into the pits already puts him back to 6th. Jones went through as he was on the slowdown.
Let's go down to the pits now for this driver change. Parsons out and Harvey will be in.
The word from the Holden dealer team is that both cars will have 2 pit stops. This is the first, obviously, for car 25, and a driver change as well as Parsons hop out. John Harvey gets back in. Now, they will pit one more time before the end of the race, and it depends on how Harvey feels once he has finished this driving stint as to whether he will continue to the finish. If he doesn't feel all that well, Parsons will take over the driving. It has been a very quick stop, as you can see. Parsons gets out of the way. That was the only thing that was holding them up. John Harvey ready to go. The car won't start. They're giving it a push now. This has cost them dearly. They're in 6th place at the moment. This is going to cost them valuable seconds. Harvey is away now. As I said, they will pit one more time. In the meantime, it's back to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Pat Welsh. A very, very quick pit stop there for David Parsons climbing out and John Harvey getting back in. Harvey, a veteran of this course, Mount Panorama. They would have dropped down a spot or two because Parsons had done all the work with Alan Jones, and now Jones and Cullen's V8 Commodore will be 2 spots at least in front of them as they go up to the top of the mountain. Well, the result of the James Hardie 1000 still in doubt. We'll bring you all of the action and the closing stages of it this afternoon on 7. We'll take a break. Welcome back to the James Hardie 1000. We're following car number 7, Senior Constable Lester Smurden from the Queensland Highway Patrol in the big Rooster entry. Car running basically in Group A trim for this race, and there are a lot of Commodore drivers have been following its progress here at Mount Panorama.
Well, a lot of them are interested in how it runs, including Peter Brock. And Brock clever man, has given these guys a lot of assistance in preparing the car, obviously with an eye to his own future in Group A next year. He wants to see how it all works on their car and make adjustments accordingly for his own Group A campaign in '85.
The Queensland Highway Patrol cars are done up pretty much the same way as the Leicester Smurden car. And
what with big rooster signs on it?
I'm talking in terms of performance. I'm sure that this year they're running in this race will give them something of a head start for next year when Group A prevails.
22nd spot on the track, number 7 outright for Leicester Smurden and the Highway Patrol entry. Another car that I think just indicates the consistency, the reliability that Group A is going to bring to the Australian Touring Car Championship in '85.
Well, when you've been watching the Rovers today here at Mount Panorama, and of course the Group A BMW being driven by Prince Leopold Von Bayern, it might be wise to recall that in Europe a lot of the Group A races are over 24 hours, so they really do have that reliability factor, and they are developed for long-distance racing. And it can only benefit Australia. See a lot more cars very close together. Well, on the subject of lots more cars, we've got a problem here with His Royal Highness. And has he got a tyre gone off? Yes, he has. So that's going to be a limp back to the pits for Prince Leopold Von Bayern. And if he stays, that's what I was going to suggest. If he gets across to that part of the course, there'll be a lot less traffic on the Autobahn when he gets down to the bottom.
Well, Conrod Strait is going to seem oh so long to him this time as he crawls his way down.
Well, he'll be heading into the pits.
Yeah, and I think they might take advantage of this for a driver change and put Denny Hulme back in the car.
They could easily do. Well, here's the shot from the Race Cam Mark III in the BMW. Still very steady. He's got a tyre gone off and he's trying to limp back to the pit area as he comes down Conrod Strait. The drive in off there to the right-hand side. And the BMW team will be aware of this now by, that's the Paul Jones Freedom Fence entry, the V8. It's boiling pretty badly down there, so maybe it has run its course. That was running quite reliably too.
Yeah, it looks like, I don't know whether it's Paul Jones or Peter Hopwood that was at the wheel.
I think it was Peter.
Perhaps he's got some water in the boot. He can cool things down a bit.
Hoppy, of course, a former Australian sports car champion.
Well, here's Prince Leopold coming back in.
He's made it, but only just.
The team, as all the race teams here at Mount Panorama along Pit Road, tapped into our telecast, so they are following the race. They can follow more of it that way than just with two-way communications to their drivers. They can check out how the opposition's going. So let's go down now to Pat Welsh.
I don't think this was far from a scheduled pit stop anyway, but obviously it was forced. There was talk that when the drivers were changed, obviously Denny Hulme is getting in now, but there was talk earlier that Jim Richards, who was out of the Group C race, may well take over the driving duties. That hasn't happened. Denny Hulme is changing with Prince Leopold Von Bayern now. It's a fairly quick stop as well. They're taking 3 churns of fuel, about 110 litres roughly, and having trouble again with the left-hand front. Prince strapping in Denny Hulme for his second driving stint today, and hopefully they'd be hopeful here in the BMW team that he can go through till the finish of the race now.
He's got a colourful helmet, Prince Leopold. He's obviously a Canterbury supporter.
He has. He's picked the right colours to come for Australia, hasn't he, Mike?
Yes, not bad. Well, they're carrying out a very, very quick pit stop, and I see Jim Richards over there too, Pat.
You can see Jim Richards there, and as I mentioned, Frank Gardner was tossing around the idea of putting Jim in the driver's seat for this final spell. I also mentioned, Mike, that this is not really far away from their scheduled pit stop. Obviously, a lot slower than what they'd planned, and they're having a few trouble strapping Hulme in. I think they've got that just about sorted out now. Richards giving him a little bit of advice, and they should be underway very shortly. The car is running. It hasn't been turned off.
Question is, will they maintain their second placing in the Group A category? Behind the Rover, Johnny Smith in the Toyota Sprinter was third. We'll have to check that. The car moving now and on its way out. Denny Hulme at the wheel The Rover goes by to put a lap on the BMW in Group A, and Johnny Smith also went through in the Toyota Sprinter, so I think that'll relegate the Prince and Denny Hulme to third spot now in the Group A category.
Okay, let's go down to the pits to Cullen Young.
Well, Dick Johnson is still holding the Falcon flag high here at Mount Panorama, but Brisbane driver with not so much luck early in the race was John English. John entered a Falcon V8 this year. You've been a regular to Bathurst for many years, but you had a confrontation on the mountain earlier.
We certainly did, Cole. Unfortunately, we got jammed in by
and we can see the action coming up here now in slow motion, John. You're in the blue Falcon behind those three cars, and just coming down the inside of the Mazda and straight ahead. Any problems with the car there, John, causing that?
Yes, it's out of control. No, actually, what happened was I was taking the inside line for the corner, as you could see, and the little Mazda, which had been holding me up for about half a lap, decided he wanted the corner too, so he pulled over in front of me, which is a shame, really, because our car was going extremely well at the time. We were second Falcon on the track. We'd come from 27th to 12th spot, and it's one of those things. You can put it down to bad luck, motor racing, all those old cliches.
Well, you punched a fairly decent hole in the cement wall up there just past Skyline.
I have to put a nice little plaque up there remembering it for me.
Well, it certainly didn't do much to the front end of the Falcon. Here we see it again. John, what were your thoughts just as this was happening?
Can I say it on camera? I don't think
you probably can't.
No, I must admit it looks much worse than I thought it was, actually.
And what about the Falcon? Have you had a chance to have a look at it? What's the damage?
Look, we were considering trying to get the car going, but quite frankly, the car's stuffed. So we'll endeavour to get it going for Surface Paradise, which is another round of the Endurance Series, and hopefully we can go better then. It's a shame for us because the car today, for the first time, has really started cracking well. And we were hoping for good placing, but never mind. Maybe next year.
Okay, tough break, John, in the Alan Moffat Falcon here at Mount Panorama. Back to Mike Raymond.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, John English, and thank you, Cullen Young.
Hope he's got shares in ready mix. He's really knocked quite a bit of concrete out of the way.
Going to say that was a tongue-in-cheek thing. Was there something going wrong? Okay, number 61 is the class leader in Group A. That's the Mobile Super Drop, a Rover Vitesse, and at the wheel is Jeff Allen, a very interesting driver. Let's take a look at Jeff Allen, 29 years of age. Consistent winner in England and throughout Europe. He's been in racing for 13. Well, he looks so young, it's world blind, that he'd actually started when he was 12.
Bit of experience at Le Mans there.
Well, he's a fellow who, I think you mentioned earlier, Steve, 2 laps around here on the first day on Wednesday. And he wasn't sporting a suntan when he arrived, but I'll tell you what, he was as white as a sheet when he came in after 2 laps. But he's got to grips with this track, and the Rover is running superbly. We'll follow its progress when we return to Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Welcome back to Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Stephen Brook in car number 72. Of course, one of the contenders in the Group A class today in the Toyota Sprinter, sharing the drive with Johnny Smith. And the car has really performed very, very creditably here at Mount Panorama this week. Heading up to the mountain. Well, the Group A class is certainly a hot class in this year's race. Gary Wilkinson.
Yeah, the Rover, of course, up front with Allen at the lead. Let's take a look at the top group, in fact, in this category. So we go Stephen Brook, the car handling nicely for him.
It's only a 1600cc engine, but it's pretty towy around the circuit.
But the scoreboard will show us that in Group A, it stands this way. Allen and Hahn, 61 in the lead, then Hulme and Prince Leopold in 62, the BMW, Smith and Brook in the Sprinter, then Gulson and O'Donnell, Kraft and Gryce. They're the top 5 in the Group A category in the James Hardie 1000 after 97 laps.
Just arriving at the pit area is, of course, John French. John steps out. The veteran's done his stint and done it well again today. And in steps Queensland's Dick Johnson for the burst to the checkered flag. Let's go down and see what's happening there.
Thanks, Mike. Well, Dick, speaking to him just a couple of seconds ago before this pit stop, he's not absolutely certain that he will drive to the end of the race, although we all know how determined he is. It seems unlikely, unless something goes drastically wrong with the car, that he will hop out of it now. But Johnson, fairly quick pit stop again. He's away, taking over from John French. John French, have you got a second? Conditions fairly hot out there, and it's been a long, hard chase for you.
Sorry, Pat, couldn't hear you.
It's been a long, hard chase for you, chasing the 05 Commodore.
Yes, it was a pretty hard chase. Actually, the hardest part out there is trying to dodge all the slower cars.
You've dropped about a half a lap, I suppose, for the Commodore. Do you think you still can't catch them at this stage?
Oh, well, Dick's back in the car, and he's a bit quicker than me, so hopefully we will.
Okay, John, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pat Welsh. The pit stop time, 36.64 seconds, 36.64 the time to John French to jump out and Johnson to get in and get back in the groove again at Mount Panorama.
The steering wheel of Dick Johnson sitting a little straighter than that of Alan Gryce. Certainly no steering problems for Dick Johnson.
We were checking through the the top entries in the Group A category just a moment ago. If you're wondering what happened to car 70, the Alpha GTB6 of Cullen Bond, I think Colin Young has an update on that for us. The car has been wheeled in behind the pits for some work. Colin Young, what was that all about?
Well, Colin Bond in the Alpha GTV has gone to the back of the pits to, I believe, change an engine in that car. The car had started in position 52 with Alfie Constanzo co-driving with Colin Bond in the Alfa Romeo GTV, but they'd had a lot of problems earlier in the race and had taken the car into the garage area behind the pits. It's been a very busy area here in the pit area during the James Hardie 1000, and the Alpha GTV is certainly not the only car that has had a problem.
Well, okay, thanks very much, Colin Young. We'll be back with you in just a moment. Right now, we've got a race cam down Conrod Straight again with Dick Johnson. Bad luck for Colin Bond and Alfie Costanzo. An engine change in the Alpha GTV6 is going to absorb a lot of time and put them out of the running in the Group A category. Out of Dick Johnson's car, and we pick up coming through Hill Corner the race leader, Peter Brock, back at the wheel of 05. And Johnson now back, of course, at the wheel of the Big Falcon, and it's a real contest from here to the finish.
Peter Brock heading for number 8 at Mount Panorama. He's just been going so smoothly all day, along with Larry Perkins. And really, you've just got to think of something disastrous happening to them before you can consider somebody else winning.
Well, you must admire any team that can put together their act as well each year at this race as the dealer team. They go after this. This means more to them than anything else. They're prepared to sacrifice the Australian Touring Car Championship to do other types of racing. Heading back over the top. And the 05 car running superbly. So too was Johnson's. Let's not take anything away. And we've seen so much happen in the closing stages of a race such as the James Hardie. And they've all mentioned some of the slower cars today. There's just a case in point. That was the Stones Mazda RX-7, and he was trying to do the right thing of getting out of the way. But of course, the driver of 05 was committed to one line, then had to change at the last moment. Well, I tell you what, the crowd on top of the hill haven't given up cheering for the red and white Commodore since this race started. If you're a Brock Perkins fan, that means you've got to stand there all day long in the blazing sun or in the snow and just keep cheering. There's the new James Hardie scoreboard that sits atop the tower here, showing the leading group of cars for all the spectators. A marvellous innovation. It's been able to keep all the spectators up to date with what's happening along Pitt Straight, and you can actually see the board from the top of the mountain.
The board will tell you that the car in 4th place on the track at the present time is the Kmart entry, Warren Cullen and Alan Jones. Cullen in the car at the moment, and as the race continues, they are looming very large indeed. Alan Jones is in our pit studio now with Colin Young.
Thanks very much, Gary. Alan, you're running around earlier in the car, and I believe you're getting back in for another driving stint shortly.
Yes, that's right, Colin. I think about 24 laps from now I'll be hopping in for my last stint.
You ran with Warren Cullen here a few years ago, and it wasn't a very successful appearance, so things appear much happier this year.
I'm about 450% in front of that now, at this point.
Alan, earlier this morning we saw that multi-car pile up right at the start of the race, and Alan Moffat claimed that one of the big reasons is that there is not a full, complete warm-up lap here for the James Hardie 1000, which apparently is the trend in international racing.
I'd certainly say that's probably a contributing factor. I think to allow the cars to do one single lap and then sit on the grid for half an hour before the start of the race is ridiculous. I think they should do one slow lap behind a pace car or even by themselves, and even maybe give some thought to a rolling start perhaps.
Alan, Group A touring car racing comes to Australia next year. What are your thoughts on that class?
Well, I think it'll be terrific. I think we'll see a lot of manufacturer participation. We're going to see a lot of different makes of cars, and that'll make racing itself a lot more interesting.
Alan, we'll let you go and rejoin the race. The Nissan Bluebird of George Fury coming back in to make a pit stop. We'll go back to Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Colin, and a very delighted Alan Jones to be back at Mount Panorama. Well, this is, I think, a big problem looming for the Nissan team. The car...
Nobody seems in too much of a hurry.
No, the car was limping down Conrod Straight.
They should be in a hurry. The car was in 3rd place. It must be something serious for them to take their time like this when they were running so close to the leaders.
Okay, let's cross down to Pat Welsh and find out exactly what's going on with the Nissan team.
This is not a scheduled pit stop, Mike. They swapped. Gary Scott jumped out of the car only about 10 or 15 minutes ago, so George hasn't been in it all that long. They're very busy at the moment. They're working on the rear of the car. They haven't bothered to change tyres. They changed the right-hand tyre, right-hand rear tyre, and that's all. But Fury looks totally unconcerned. He's getting a push at the moment.
That does not look good.
He still hasn't got his door closed, Michael. So
I don't think you'll have to worry about the door, Pat.
No, I think they're pushing it behind the pits.
We'll see if we can grab a Howard Marsden. Howard, what's the problem?
The differential has gone. There's a hole right in it. We don't know whether he's got a rock into it or what's happened, but the differential's completely destroyed.
Are you going to try and get it back on the track to finish the race?
Yes, we shall.
Best of luck with it.
Thank you.
Well, he's a professional, Howard Marsden. You've got to really admire the Nissan team. That really is tragic, like for them to think that the big problems they've had all year are turbocharger problems. They've cured that, and now the rear end gives out. Well, there's some interesting stories to unfold in the concluding stages of the James Hardie 1000. We'll be back in a moment, live from Mount Panorama.
captain is in command of a sinking ship. Peter Jansen back in the pits once more in the number 3 Cadbury Schweppes Commodore, and not a contender any longer in the James Hardie.
Oh, our second place man, is that Dick Johnson pulling up? Where is that coming out of? It's coming out of the cutting, and Johnson has come to a stop up there. Oh, this is tragic news for the Queenslander who's been running so strongly and has just really affected the pit stop.
Somebody, I've heard a report out of fuel. That can't be right. He was in the pits not so long back.
Well, we'll try and get a report from Dick Johnson himself. We'll wait for that to come through. So big troubles for Dick Johnson and the number 17 crew.
And there, his wife Jill in the pits, trying to establish clear communication with Dick to find out just what it is. Well, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah. I don't think we'll worry about the dialogue, please, out of Dick Johnson. I would think that he has a problem, and you might be right, he might have a fuel problem up there.
Yeah, he's not out of fuel. I think he's got a fuel line blockage, more like it. I think maybe let's try and find out if we can from Dick himself, perhaps. Dick Johnson, Gary Wilkinson. Dick, can you hear us?
Yeah, mate, I can hear you.
What's the problem?
Some goddamn thing in the tank, I don't know.
What, you got a fuel blockage?
No, it's not a blockage, mate, it just won't pick it up. Mate, you got a problem when it won't pick up a full tank.
Dick, this is desperate bad luck for you.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Jill, I can see the look of disappointment on her face down in the pit.
I think it's one more of anger.
Dick, you know, it's very hard to come up with the right words to say at a time like this. I know how desolate you must feel because it's called the Great Race, and I know that's exactly what you planned to make it today. You're just stuck there now. What the hell can you do?
Just wait for a truck to pick me up. Damn it.
I don't think we can say much more about that, Dick. I know what's going through your mind. We'll come back to you later. I hope there's some chance of rectifying the problem. And for Jill and also the crew, I know how badly they feel as well. However, that's the situation. As you can see, Dick Johnson second on the road after a pit stop and has a problem with the fuel pickup in the Falcon. And that's all he can do is just sit there and wait for the truck to pick him up and bring him back into the pit area.
And suddenly the top end of the race has changed dramatically with George Fury disappearing as well as Dick Johnson. We're following the leader still, and that Commodore.
Not just the leader, 2 laps clear of the leader. 0-5. Peter Brock coming in for a quick pit stop, taking advantage of this enormous lead that he has with 59 laps remaining in the Great Race of '84. Now, I wonder whether or not he might give Larry Perkins another stint in the car. Yes, he will.
Let's go down for our pitman, Pat Welsh.
That's right, Mike. Larry Perkins' turn to have a shot. I think he'll be in for about 25 laps if their plans go according to what I was told just a few minutes ago. Peter Brock will have a break, but as you said just a short time ago, they haven't. They've got a 2-lap break on the field now, so they can virtually relax, I suppose, although Peter Brock won't agree with that. We'll try and get a word with him. As again, the Holden dealer team pull off a lightning fast pit stop. They've been doing this all day. You can see just how professional they are.
Thanks, Pat. And professional's the right word. Out goes Larry Perkins, and back to Pat with Peter Brock.
Peter, you're probably aware now that both Fury and Johnson are out. You've got a 2-lap break on the field.
I didn't know what gap I was just about to walk and find out, but I saw Dick's car parked in the cutting, you know, very sad, really, because he's put up a tremendous fight today.
I don't suppose you'll relax at all, though, with that good buffer?
No, not at all. No, now we've got to just drive accurately and smoothly and You know, I've had buffers here before and had things go wrong and nursed it to the finish and it said nothing, you know.
The plan is for you to join the car again in about 25 laps time, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, now we've got a buffer. We let Larry have a bit of a drive and we're quite, you know, able to change our tactics a little now back to playing a bit of percentage. We haven't been playing a percentage gun really until now. We've been going for it.
Absolutely no problems at all out there?
No, she's going like a rocket.
Okay, Peter, thanks a lot. Okay.
Well, Peter should be back in the car in about an hour's time, we think, if 25 laps is Larry Perkins' stint in the 05 Commodore. And there it goes, past the sad side of Dick Johnson's car, parked in the cutting.
Alrighty, might be time now to brief you with the number of retirements. Let's see who's pulled out and the reasons for it. Well, there's some of the cars that are out and the reasons for same. They come across the top of the mountain. Number 05, that's the dealer team Commodore. And Larry Perkins at the wheel. Everything running ever so smoothly for them this year. The James Hardie 1000 at Bathurst. Leading at this stage from the Warren Cullen, Alan Jones, Coles Kmart entry. So it might be an idea now to check out the complete run-through on the Castrol scoreboard. Well, there you have the reasons. We've given you the reasons why some of the cars are out, and now you have a complete rundown on the field in the James Hardie 1000. In car number 05, coming across the top of Mount Panorama, Larry Perkins, in amongst a lot of heavy traffic though. A lot of slower cars. You can see the speed difference. It's very pronounced at this part of the course. Coming up behind the Stones Mazda RX-7, I believe.
He's got his headlights on constantly. I think maybe that's because rather than flash all the cars that he zooms past, if he's got them on all the time, they'll know he's there.
There's Larry Perkins trailing the Mazda RX-7 onto Conrod Straight. He will now pull to the right. The Mazda hugs the inside line as they go down Conrod Straight. And all they really have to do now is to conserve, put their laps together nicely. They don't require anything the times they were setting earlier this morning. Make sure at all times to nurse the car. So at this stage, it's Larry Perkins in the 05 Commodore leading from Warren Cullen and Alan Jones and Alan Moffat and Greg Hansford. That's the top three in the James Hardie 1000. More action to follow when we return to Mount Panorama. The scene at Mount Panorama at Bathurst as the great race continues. Nothing certain about the result of this event, though as you all know, the Peter Brock has won it 7 times and bidding for win number 8 today. However, so much has gone wrong with so many of the competitors. Some of the fancied teams are out. One driver and one team that has been making a bold showing here this year is the Warren Cullen Kmart squad of 2 cars. They have Ron Harrop and Andrew Harris in one that has already been retired. This is their lead car, number 8. Being driven at the moment by Warren Cullen, and will be driven fairly shortly in another driving stint by Alan Jones. And I think at this stage Warren Cullen would be very, very happy indeed, up to second behind Peter Brock and Larry Perkins, and still ahead of the Mazda RX-7 driven by Alan Moffat and Greg Hansford.
The high attrition rate in this race has suddenly lifted people who were seemingly well down the list into high positions, and the Cullen Commodore is, I guess it's one of those. It was hovering around the 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th position, and suddenly it's up there in 2nd position, and if there's even just a hiccup from the Brock Commodore, they'll be right in there.
So too will the Moffat Mazda, I think. Warren Cullen makes interesting reading. He's been around motor racing for a number of years. He's always gone first class with his motor racing programs. That is to be admired. Here's some of the information about Warren Cullen, who's 36 years of age and comes from Victoria.
Likes the water sports.
7 starts at Mount Panorama previously. Began racing a decade ago. Winner of the 577th, 4th at the Australian Touring Car Championship round in Adelaide, and in 82 and 84. So here comes Warren Cullen, down again into Forest Elbow, back onto Conrod Straight. We've been getting some speed readings from the friendly folk at Ortex, who are taking radar readings halfway down Conrod Straight. This is probably one of the best sounding V8 Commodores. Just listen as they come beneath the camera position. Ooh. Here it comes now. Cullen and Jones car, 264 kilometres an hour down Conrod Straight, and that is really moving.
That's an identical time to the Jansen Commodore, but as we mentioned before, 10 kilometres an hour down on the speed of the Brock and Perkins Commodore. So that Holden dealer team has really done some research to get those extra kilometres an hour out of their car, and it just makes that little bit of extra difference for every lap, and it builds up, and it's 2 laps difference that Warren Cullen has to make up before he can catch the Commodore, currently driven by Larry Perkins. Up Mountain Straight comes Warren Cullen. Likes the outdoor life, snow and water skiing, bit of fishing. And after this race, I'm sure he'll feel like he needs a holiday, and that wouldn't be a bad way to spend it.
Well, there's still a lot of activity in the pit area. Let's go back down there to Pat Welsh.
Thanks, Mike. Well, of course, all the drama happening in the last half hour with both Dick Johnson and George Fury out of the race. And I think the real unlucky thing about George Fury's exit is the fact that John Shepherd, he's had so many problems with turbos in the last 12, 18 months. He seemed finally to get those sorted out. He got pole position, was working his way slowly through the field again today, and he's hit with a differential problem.
I guess, Pat, there's a couple of things that have happened. In the past, he has had a couple of problems with gearboxes, and when you get the car working as hard as those little Datsuns are, it strains the daylights out of the transmission, and you see it happening as the race goes on. The temperatures build up and build up and build up and finally fail, and I'm not real sure what actually failed in it yet, so we couldn't really make a comment as far as whether something's broken or just plain worn out. But the oil just tends to break down. It gets so hot and it just can't keep lubricating.
Well, they have the Bluebird out the back in the garage at the moment. They're working on the differential. They're going to try and replace it, I understand, Mike. If they can do that, they will have it back on the track because they'd dearly love to finish this race. Although, as you are well aware, their chances of winning it are now well and truly gone. That's the latest down here from the pits, although I think Colin Young might have a little more detail on pit road.
Thank you, Pat. Welsh car 63, the Audi driven by Chris Hire, has been in the pits, and the pit crew have just done a lightning muffler change on this car. They had a problem underneath the car with the muffler, but the crews had it up on the jacks, and a new muffler. Chris Hire's back in the car. The crew are pushing it out to start it now, and the Audi 5+5 of Chris Hire and Jerry Murphy back in the race. Back to Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Colin. Picking up the cars, coming over the top of the mountain. Coming through now is the John Sands entry, Rusty French, and Jeff Russell driving the car, and they have made steady progress up into the top 10. They were down around about 18th spot, keeping in mind that in same colours last year, Bob Morris did such a heck of a job in the John Sands entry. Rusty French, of course, drove this year, like so many of the top Australian touring car drivers at Le Mans, and acquitted himself very, very well indeed. We have the John Sands Commodore V8 heading down Conrod Straight, and Jeff Russell getting the run in the car. David Selden was listed to be the co-driver, but Russell has got the co-driver's role for today's race, and they are doing very, very comfortably indeed.
It's been a curious sort of day when you consider the big names have had big problems, and now with entering the later stages of the race, we're finding that the teams that have just been taking it slow and steady and thinking more about reliability than really quick times, they're starting to move into prominence, and this is a case in point. Rusty French's car now into 9th position, and it's only got to take another couple of laps as sensational as the ones we saw a little while ago when 2 or 3 of the leaders dropped out for Rusty French to be in the top 5.
Well, there are very few teams who can come to Mount Panorama and make their plans towards reliability and to just stay in there, run at the selected pace all day, and then break all game plans when they get involved with racing hard in the opening laps of the race. There are a few exceptions to that rule. Peter Brock, Dick Johnson, Alan Moffat, all of the high budget teams. But you can see that even the smallest things can go wrong. I mean, who would have allowed for the fact that the fuel pickup on the Dick Johnson car coming into play when they had virtually a very, very safe second sewn up in this race. And then only a couple of laps later, George Fury, who we mentioned has had some problems during the course of the year with the reliability factor of the Nissan Turbo. Not a turbo murmur all week here at Bathurst for the Nissan team. However, they have a rear-end failure.
It's not just the reliability of the cars that we have to worry about either. The drivers themselves, this time of day, it's just coming up to 3 o'clock. I'll be feeling a little bit weary. They've got to keep that concentration up. Shadows, as you can see, are starting to get longer on the track. It's a little bit distracting as they make their way around, and they've got to keep their mind right on the job. Make sure that they don't come unstuck, especially as they move through the slower cars.
Okay, we might get an Ortex radar trap reading on the Rusty French car. It comes on the outside, 256 kilometres an hour. They are really hanging in there. They're doing well, and here is the car coming down to the left-hander, being followed here by the RX-7, the yellow Pages directory sponsored car, and along pit straight again. So the French car continues to circulate without any problems at all. So Peter Brock and Larry Perkins, 05, continued to lead the great race from Warren Cullen and Alan Jones, and now moving back up into 3rd, Johnny Hardie and Johnny Parsons. They're the top 3 in the James Hardie 1000. We'll have more in a moment from Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Welcome back to Mount Panorama at Bathurst. We're following car number 27. That's the Brian Bird Ford entry, driven by Alf Grant of Queensland and young Craig Harris of Queensland in the familiar blue Brian Bird Ford colours. And at this stage, we bid farewell for a moment, or for an hour or so, to our viewers from New Zealand. They'll be back to join us for the concluding stages of the great race. Grant and Harris, they have been doing very well when you consider they started in 42nd position and have now made it up to the top 10.
Yes, it gives some hope to the Queenslanders again, who must have been so disappointed at the way Dick Johnson made his exit from the race. Fuel problems. But these boys from Queensland in the Falcon, again carrying the hopes of the Northern State.
Well, their blue Ford once again heads up Mountain Straight. Car is still straight and they're running it at a reliable pace. It's been turning 224s, 225s practically all day. As the entry, the Brian Bird Ford entry of Grant and Harris, makes its way up to the cutting, we go to our Castrol scoreboard service to show you who is leading and where all the cars are placed. Welcome. Sorry, Steve.
I say, that's the view from the BMW, the Group A BMW. The camera mounted in the headlight. Nice clean picture. We'll get a bit of a wipe again here as he heads across the mountain. Thanks very much. You see what we were talking about a moment ago with the shadows of the trees falling across the track now. That can be a little bit distracting, especially if you're feeling a little weary.
I'll tell you what, this is a racetrack that tends to keep you pretty sharp though.
Yes, you can't afford to relax.
Past the Castrol Tower, to the S's. Wow, that will give you some indication of just how strong the Commodores run across the mountain here.
Oh. And we'd have Denny Hulme at the wheel at the moment, I think, wouldn't we, Mike?
Yes, Denny Hulme at the wheel of the Group A BMW, still trying to fight its way back up to challenge the Rovers, who are running very, very strongly in Group A.
The performance of all the Group A cars will astound quite a few people, I think. The Rover 61 is currently in 13th position overall, and the Group A BMW 18th. That's overall. So an outstanding effort by these cars, which are proving reliable and probably a lot quicker than many thought.
As the Group A Rover comes down to beneath the bridge, Denny Hulme at the wheel, and it's Mike Raymond. Denny Hulme, good afternoon to you. Let him get along past this traffic.
Yeah, okay, now I can see it.
Just wait till Denny gets out of this corner and heads up Mountain Straight. Okay, Mike Raymond to Denny Hulme. Denny, are you receiving us okay?
everything's going fine. She's really going like a rocket ship, should be going now.
Well, this must be a far nicer experience at Bathurst this year than your previous encounter.
Hang about. Sorry, the reception's not very good.
That's okay, the pictures are beautiful, Denny.
Denny, if you can pick us up now, how are you enjoying the drive?
Very good. Where we are sitting here behind the Ford and the Commodore right behind us.
I think we might let Denny continue, but we'll take the pictures for a lap because he is having a great scrap here. Heading up Mountain Straight again. Keeping in mind, it's the first time in his career that Denny Hulme has been asked a conversation on television. Our Australian drivers are used to it now, but it's somewhat off-putting. And he is study and concentration. Former World Grand Prix champion. Still dabbles in touring car racing in New Zealand. Jumped at the opportunity to come across to Australia to compete with Prince Leopold Von Bayern, and when requested by Frank Gardner.
He was a little concerned that perhaps he hadn't done as much racing as he would have liked for a classic race like this one, but I think his form on the track today suggests that he's still got what it takes.
Well, just watch him down through this area of the racetrack. He's putting plenty of pressure on the driver just immediately ahead of him. This is the high audio entry. And watch the nice clean lines left and right.
Oh, a nice shot of the flames from the exhaust.
Watching, of course, these pictures, the man who knows all about race cars for our specialist comments, and that's John Shepherd. John, what's your impression? I think John Shepherd is with us now. Coming down to... how close is that? That's the John Sands entry. Little wiggle there. And we'll come back to talk to John Shepherd. We'll take a break and then back live at Mount Panorama Bathurst. Panorama. Just look who's back on the track. You can't keep a good man down, and Dick Johnson has the problem sorted out with the green Ford and is back out on the racetrack and circulating as though he was trying to qualify the car for Hardie's Heroes yesterday. He's got ground to make up, but he's still in the top 10.
He's around 6 laps down on the race leader, but he's just glad to be out there and doing what he loves to do so much, just go motor racing. A little bit out of contention, but still circulating very quickly.
Doing laps of 2:16.46. That's what we got him last time around, 2:16.46. Maybe time to update the James Hardie 1000. Hour 5 of the great race. And for our race cam drivers, both Alan Gryce and Dick Johnson, problems. Gryce fighting it badly, handling Commodore. However, for the dealer team, they were searching around for the pit stop, a quick one that would get David Parsons inside and straight out for John Harvey. Parsons and Harvey, they've been the big movers. Parsons makes a quick pit stop, and Harvey quick to take over, battling their way up into third on the grid behind Peter Brock and Warren Cullen. The car, though, failed to start initially. With some help from the pit crew, it was underway. There were problems, though, for car number 62, Von Bayern, with a tyre going off and forced to limp all the way back to the pits. Even for Paul Jones, bigger problems when the Falcon overheated. His race was just about over. John Smith continuing forward progress in the beautiful little Toyota Group A car, heading up the mountain and looking good for a great showing in the Australian Touring Car title for next year. A quick pit stop. John French had kept his end up, sent Dick Johnson back out. And the Green's tough Falcon was underway inside of 36 seconds. Action on the top of the mountain. 05 car passing one of the Mazdas. Perkins and Brock continuing to stretch their lead in the Great Ace. Looking for 8 victories here at Mount Panorama. Johnson back behind the wheel of the Green Falcon. But only 2 laps later, trouble was to beset the Australian Touring Car champion. Troubles also for the Nissan Turbo team. Differential packing up and the car going out of action. And then for Johnson, tragedy. A fuel pickup not allowing him to get across the top of the mountain. He had some few words to say about it. His wife just listened. They finally got the car back, and Johnson was to get back on the racetrack again. Dick playing mechanic and trying to prime. He thought his race was over. However, when the truck arrived to get him back, he was underway again. Peter Brock being told of exactly the troubles besetting both the Nissan team and Dick Johnson. And while this is going on, Warren Cullen making forward progress in the field up to second. Alan Jones, Australia's Formula One champion some years ago, still to take over. The Johnson car going to the truck, but it's back on the race. And here he is, car number 17. Dick Johnson back on the track. And at this stage, running back in about 7th in the field. Let's go to the pits and to Gary Wilkinson.
Mike Raymond, thank you very much. And 2 special guests and very keen observers with us here in our pit studio at Mount Panorama. The Australian and New South Wales ministers, plural, for sport, John Brown and Michael Cleary. Gentlemen, welcome. It's a bit noisy and a bit hectic, but I think you would have had an interesting day so far.
Well named the great race, Gary.
It is, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't know whether you are at heart a motor racing fan, but I think this might help convert you.
Oh, I'm a sports nut. What's the difference? This is just another manifestation of Australians. It's fun.
Michael, enjoying it?
Yeah, well, I'm an old nut from the old Speedway days at the showground.
I remember.
When I used to sell the soft drinks for Modesto, so, you know, I'm enjoying it. This is the first time I've been to Bathurst, but it's an incredible scene and it's a great spectacle, and it's an international flavour that's doing a great deal for Australia.
Of course, the Australian government, John, has had some input recently into motor racing, and obviously is keenly interested in developments with regard to the Endurance Championship upcoming at Sandown, the discussions over a possible Formula One championship race in Australia in the near future. And I guess with Australia going to Group A touring car racing next year, it's possible we could have a round of a World Group A championship here in the not too distant future. Some of the tracks are going to be putting the bite on you for some upgrading.
They're already doing it. Would you believe it's happened here today already?
Is that right? Well, we're going to go to Dick Johnson's car, number 17, the big Queensland Falcon now. Dick's had his problems today. Some fuel trouble going up to the top of the mountain just a short time ago has cost him valuable laps. As you can see, the race cam is putting out great pictures for us. Dick obviously a little disconsolate at having dropped about 4 or 5 laps in that incident. We're going to establish contact with Dick Johnson. Dick, Gary Wilkinson from the pits. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can, Gary.
Dick, I know you've got a big load on your shoulders with what's happened so far, and I don't want to put too much more on you at this stage, but if you have a moment, the Australian Government Minister for Sport, Mr. John Brown, is here. You might like to have a few words with him.
Sure, mate, not a problem.
How are you, Dick?
I've spent better Sundays.
I know what it's like. I've run out of petrol on many occasions. But you're a great battler. It's good to see you out there. It's not unlike the reputation that Dick Johnson has for being the great battler of the motor racing sport.
Well, I suppose, you know, everyone says that's motor racing, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a flaw in what has been probably a faultless preparation, because I'm not sure what broke on the car, but whatever it was, really made me annoyed.
Well, you're still out there and you're still with it. Lost a few laps, but you're still there, boy.
Yeah, I tell you what, mate, we've just broken a blooming axle, would you believe?
Thank you.
Mate, it never rains, it bloody well pours.
Everything in your favour's against you.
Oh, mate, I don't believe this. I think I should have stayed in bed.
What'll I do, call the NRMA for you or something, or what?
Oh, you might as well ruddy talk to me, mate. I've got nothing else to do.
Oh dear, more disappointment for Dick Johnson, and we've lost our race cam picture there, but it really has been a dreadful day for him. But as you say, he is such a battler and such a trier, and I think that's one of the great things in Dick Johnson that's representative, I think, of most Australian sporting champions.
Well, I think it's made him a great favourite with sports fans all over Australia, Gary, when we can all recall what happened here last year, and various other things have happened to Dick along the way when he's seen to have races won and something's gone wrong. But yeah, I think it's pretty typical of Australian sportsmen that, or women, that's the way we battle on.
Michael, I saw an interview with you the other day, in fact, on Channel 7 in Sydney, about new developments and new money into sport and assistance in New South Wales. You must be pretty proud of that development too.
Yes, it is. We're still having a few talks with the people at Oran Park too. We're trying to do something there. I've already offered them $100,000 to try and develop a new track as far as the drag racing is concerned. But what I'm really trying to do is to get them to look at maybe formula racing initially and maybe look at the drag later on, because we have got problems as far as the noise pollution is concerned, and I think we'll ever obliviate that problem, particularly with the jets. But we want to do something in New South Wales, and if we can work together with a pastoral company that got Oran Park, well, I'm sure that we can. We've offered the money, as I said, and if we can get over initial problems, we'll get some racing out there to take place of what's already been closed.
Well, I think those comments make it pretty obvious. Both the Australian and New South Wales governments are certainly very conscious of motorsport and are involved in discussions on the subject right now with various bodies, both New South Wales and around Australia. That augurs well for the future of motorsport. I want to thank you both for popping in to have a chat to us, and I hope you continue to enjoy the remainder of the race this afternoon.
Our pleasure to be here, Gary.
John Brown, Michael Cleary, Ministers for Sport. Back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you very much, Gary Wilkinson. Well, what do you say for poor old Dick Johnson? I'm lost for words. After running with a fuel pickup problem, getting back in the race, and then talking to the Federal Minister of Sport, and at the same time breaking an axle. Well, there's many more dramas, we believe, to unfold in the concluding stages of the James Hardie 1000. We'll be back at Mount Panorama in a few minutes. And welcome back to Mount Panorama at Bathurst. We're following car number 33, and that of course is Mike Bergman and Bob Stevens. That's the Daily Planet entry, Mazda RX-7. And would you believe this? They started in 39th position on the grid, and they are now making it up into the top 10. So the reliability factor really coming into play for this team. And it's good to see a team of battlers, car prepared by Bob Stevens, who is one of the moving forces within the Australian Racing Drivers Club, and also Mike Bergman, his co-driver, also very much involved with the running of the ARDC, the club, of course, that promotes the Amaroo Park Raceway in Sydney and the James Hardie 1000 at Mount Panorama.
It's been a pretty good week for them, Michael, really. They secured that Daily Planet sponsorship late, and now they're turning in a top performance on the track, as you said, moving up some 29 spots.
Well, that's good. We might even get a radar speed reading from our Autex people. Listen to the hum of the motor. Whoa! The Bergman Stevens 33 car, 251 kilometres an hour. And that is very, very quick indeed. There's Peter Brock talking with Dick Johnson on the intercom.
Big smile on his face too, I suppose. It'd be an ironical smile, because as much as he loves to compete against Dickie, he'd be quite relieved to have him out of the race and not hammering on his tail as he has been right throughout the day here at Mount Panorama.
You know, there's one thing you've got to say about some of these motor races, the sportsmen. They can climb out of a car. Their whole year has been built up to this one race. Now, Dick's won the Australian Touring Car Championship, and he did that by travelling all over Australia to all the championship rounds. But he really wants to win this race more than most. But then a year of work goes down the drain. He's conducting an interview, shrugs it off, goes away. But I'll tell you what, though, there aren't too many drivers better set up for the commencement of Group A touring car racing in Australia than Dick Johnson, who has a magnificent little Zack Speed Mustang, second one on the way from Germany. And he will drive those cars in the touring car title next year. And then hopefully towards the end of the year, they're looking at having a Group A Ford Falcon turbocharged ready.
The Mustang didn't arrive in Australia all that long ago, but Dick has put plenty of time into it, as well as, of course, working on the Green Stuff Falcon for this big race. And he and John French trialled it fairly exhaustively in the last couple of weeks and the last couple of days down here, and it was turning into some superb performances, only third or fourth in the times for the Group A cars.
Here's the 33 Daily Planet sponsored Mazda RX-7 with Bob Stevens, I believe, at the wheel.
Yes, and they're having a fairly smooth run at the moment, but so a little bit of sad news come from the pits. The car 72 of John Smith and Stephen Brook, the Toyota Sprinter that was doing so well in Group A, was third in its class, has got some oil pump problems, and on lap 119 is pulled out of the race.
In the meantime, the Bergman car, your 61, continues to lead Group A in the James Hardie 1000, and that is a great welcome to motorsport for Mobil, who have joined with JRA in bringing the Rover team to Australia. And if one of those Rovers, or both of them, manage to find their way back onto the Australian tracks for their touring car title next year, you're going to see plenty of top racing from them, and it's certainly a big chance. At the moment, number 61, driven by Jeff Allen and Armin Hahn, 13th outright, first in the class, and don't be surprised if that car doesn't make it easily into the top 10. In the meantime, we have a look once again in the pictures coming out of the number 62 BMW, driven by Denny Hulme, with Race Cam Mark III mounted in the headlight, and we'll take you for a ride across the mountain. Uh-oh, that was one of the Rovers just coming out on the left up there. Don't know if it was the 60 car or the 61, but whether it has a fuel problem or something has gone astray, we'll follow that up for you. In the meantime, we join Denny Hulme across the top of the mountain.
A little bit of a wash there across the front of the camera so that we get a nice clean picture. and down off the mountain. It's as good as Luna Park, this ride. Forest Elbow and down now onto Conrod Straight. Here we have another car from Group A. It's the Rover that Ron Dixon had a little trouble with at the top of Conrod Straight, but racing again. It's car 60.
Yes, I think that is the one with the problem. 61. Jeff Allen has already gone through. Car still circulating nicely. In the meantime, the number 60, the second of the two mobile Super Drop Rover Vitesses. See if it goes to the pits. No, he's probably just had a moment. They've got the front taped up after that off-track excursion, coming down into Forest Elbow.
And doesn't it look good for Group A racing next year? Look at the mixture in the top four in Group A at the moment. The Rover, the BMW, an Alpha, and the Mustang. So certainly no one car dominating, and it should be really great stuff for 1985.
I agree with you there, Pat. I think we're going to find, and Peter Brock certainly hasn't announced his full plans for Group A, but he'll be back. He'll be driving a Commodore. There's no doubt about that. And it will be competitive.
I suppose the big interest too, Mike, is what's going to happen to Alan Moffat in Group A next year.
Yes, there's a lot of speculation about Alan Moffat at the moment, of course, in this particular race. He's fourth on the racetrack behind Peter Brock. Car number 8, which of course is Warren Cullen and Alan Jones, John Hardie and David Parsons in the second of the dealer team Commodores, and then Alan Moffat and Greg Hansford. His final plans haven't been announced. A lot of the teams are playing very, very close to their chest. They're not opening up too much before January. Here it comes across the top of the mountain. Still sounding very, very sweet indeed.
Following it down now, across Skyline. I'm sure that the broad-minded Australian sports public at the top of the mountain would still be happy to give the Rover boys a cheer. The English boys were happy to be here, and I'm sure that the encouraging performance that they're handing in will make sure that they come back. They've already had plans to participate in New Zealand, so we look forward to a lengthy involvement of British teams in Group A racing throughout Australasia. Down Conrod Straight now, and he's following an RX-7. And slipping past. Well, that's a little bit of a surprise. You wouldn't think that the Rover would have the legs on the Mazda, but he has. Across the second hump. And into brakes now, down through the gears.
Well, the number 60 car running very, very strongly indeed. To check out what's happening, let's go to the pits.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Mike Raymond. Down here in the first pit lane area, we have Alan Moffat. Alan, how's things going?
Well, when you consider the way we started, Cullen, I think we're doing extremely well. And with all the rigmarole about whether we could or we couldn't race our second car, we didn't really get it fine-tuned, but it's going well under the circumstances.
Alan, the insurance policy paid off.
Well, yes, it did, but we sort of shortchanged ourselves in the process. It was really an emergency spare, and we thought, well, yes, if an engine blows, and that's the only thing that we considered. But I wasn't considering a first lap pileup like we got. Well, first lap, first corner.
What was the problem with your number 43 car?
Well, I think something must have jarred loose in the prang on the opening lap, and it started to overheat, and I backed off a little bit, and then it just seized up.
So what are the tactics now with Greg Hansford out on the track?
Well, he's in the box seat. We're sitting third. The others better be well prepared, because when I got out of the car, everything was going fine. And he'll take on one more stop for fuel only. The tires are going fine. We got our Dunlops are working well today. And,
Okay, Alan, sorry, go on.
he'll see the race out. I'm retired.
Are you?
Yeah.
What, completely or just from this race?
No, just for the day, thanks very much.
Okay, Alan, thanks very much. Okay, we'll go back to Mike Raymond for more on the James Hardie 1000.
Okay, thanks very much, Colin.
44 and retired? I don't think so. Alan Moffat's got a lot of racing in him.
I think he's got some Group A plans he'll unveil maybe towards mid-December. Well, the dealer team still running strongly. They are first and third. Alan Jones has now taken over from Warren Cullen. He is second to Peter Brock and Larry Perkins in the great race. We'll take a break and then we'll be back live at Mount Panorama. Welcome back to the James Hardie 1000 from Mount Panorama. We're following car number 52. It's Freddie Gisler. And of course, Fred started in 27th position and has made his way up into the top 10. He's in 9th spot at the moment.
Just another Commodore in the top 10 already. The top 4 cars now are all Commodores, with the 42 car of Alan Moffat and Greg Hansford slipping back to 5th in the last few minutes. Developments down there in the pits, so the top 4 cars Commodores, and of course another one there at position 9, the 52 car. It's Freddie Gisler, Ralph Radburn.
Ralph's from Sydney and a pretty experienced driver too. I mean, he's 43 years of age, but not as experienced as some of that age. He's only been in competitive racing for 9 years. He enjoys a bit of trail bike riding, so heavily involved in motorsport. He's not on 4 wheels, he's on 2.
Fred doing very well. Actually has a good record here at Mount Panorama. Enjoys his motor racing, and he goes out to attack this race with one thing in mind, and that is not to overstretch the car, to be around at the finish of 1,000 Ks. And that perhaps is something that escapes a few who get involved in very, very close racing, overstretch their units early in the day, and they become spectators. But you can look back through the history of this race and see the ones who attack it as a 1,000 K race, because their names are always bobbing up in the top 10.
Compared to his driving partner, Fred Gisler is a relative novice, although he's 37 years of age. He's only had 4 starts here at Bathurst. That was the last 4 years, and the last 3 years he's been involved with Ralph, and they've failed to finish. But, this year they're going like a house on fire and going really well up there in 9th spot.
Good news also coming out of the pit area. 15, the Nissan Turbo that has been under the canopy in the team pound, having the rear end replaced, is now back on the racetrack, and I believe George Fury at the wheel, but we'll double check that for you. Coming down through this is heading down now towards Forest Elbow. Gisler in the Bayline entry, number 52, the yellow and black Commodore, doing very, very nicely indeed. He's a contender for the Group C class. Might be time now to check out what's happening in Group A. Thanks to Castrol and Smith and Brook, Allen and Hahn, Denny Hulme and Prince Leopold Von Bayern. So we'll have a check through with that. Again, I don't think they've completed 199 laps. See, that doesn't make so many laps for the James Hardie 1000. We'll double check that for you in a moment. Car number 52 is Gisler. He leads along the pit straight.
See the smoke, the heat haze coming off the pit straight there is quite warm. Only on the cars though. That heat haze coming off the cars, not the track, because there's a firm southerly breeze blowing, as there has been all week really. It's been cool in Bathurst, sun's out. But, I don't think there'll be too many cars with overheating problems today.
Well, the interesting thing about Freddie Gisler too, Steve, is that in 1980, which would have made him about 33 at the time, he was named Rookie of the Year for a 6th outright in Bathurst at his first ever start in the race.
Well, life begins at 33, I suppose, for some. We're watching him make his way up the mountain. He's been through GTX Bend, up through the cutting now, and hot on his heels. It's car 28, which is in 6th position. That's the Barry Lawrence Alan Brown Commodore. So they're having a nice little dice. Both cars in the top 10. Both determined to finish this race. Barry Lawrence right on the tail. Fred Gisler. See if he can slip past. Cross skyline. Yes, he does, just inside.
There certainly wasn't much in that. He continues. Might be time now to check out activity in the pit area. Let's go down to Gary Wilkinson.
Thank you very much, Mike Raymond. Yes, as you saw before, the second of the dealer team cars has been in and out again with David Parsons back at the wheel. John Shepard, I noticed they had a little bit of trouble getting the car away there. A rather slow pit stop for the dealer team, and I think they took on a fair quantity of oil.
Yes, that was rather interesting actually, because normally the dealer team doesn't add any oil at all. It's one of the little tricks we used to perform to shatter everybody and not even lift the bonnet. And if they have done that, if the car's been oil surging, that could present some problems to them later in the race.
I noticed Alan Moffat's comments brought a smile to your face. Do you have any opinions on Moffat's likely plans for 85?
No, I was talking with the Mazda people actually earlier in the week, and they were saying that they do have something in the pipeline. They wouldn't admit what it was, and I guess you can't blame them for that, because everyone's playing their cards fairly close to their chest. But I'm sure the desire would be that Alan stayed with a Mazda for next year, and that's both from Mazda's point of view and from Alan's, I would say.
Right, what about Group A performances so far in this race? Still with quite a few laps to go, but by gee, the Rovers in particular are looking good, aren't they?
I think they're great, because a lot of people are saying, oh, they're slow and that, but I think they're using some funny yardsticks. If you look at what an A9X Tirana used to do, they weren't much faster than these Group A Rovers, so I think you'll find, given a couple of years of development, they'll be very, very quick.
And in the days of the A9X, I can remember people at large were saying, oh, ban them, they're too fast, they're dangerous.
That's right, yes. Now, I'm sure with what's going to happen with these Group A cars, we'll be very, very excited by some close motor racing, different brands. Now, I'm sure the Holden will still be there, and as we heard before, the Fords are busy developing a car, but I'm sure we'll see quite a lot of different brands, maybe even up to half a dozen, which is great.
The other thing that I've noticed with so many Group C dropouts in the race, do you think maybe some of them came here underprepared just for a last fling?
I would say you couldn't blame someone for not wanting to spend a whole block of money on, as you say, on a last fling, because it is very, very expensive to come up here fully prepared. And the comment was made, some of the cars actually look like they've just been in a rally, but as I say, you can't really blame the blokes.
John Shepherd, you've done your turns around this track. How does this picture impress you?
It's very exciting, and I think anyone who was sitting at home, especially when Denny was up close to the cars up around the top of the mountain, they would be very excited, and it's great stuff.
On a circuit of Mount Panorama, and from this viewpoint, where is it important that you pick up time, or where is it important that you keep the foot down and not lose time?
I guess the art of being a successful racing driver is being able to keep your foot down all the time, and then from there you back off. And one of the trick things that you'll see here, and I heard before the race started, Brock's going to be going too fast. Brock is one of those people that can go fast and be kind to a car, and that's obviously why he keeps winning here. And I've made the point a few times, it would do these fellas who reckon they're going to beat him a lot of good to sit behind him for 162 laps, and if they were smart enough to pass him on the last lap, because the bloke knows how to be kind to a car.
What are the points to look for, though, on the circuit when you're behind the wheel that can cost you dearly if you're not paying 100% attention?
The thing that will cause bloke problems here, especially where we're coming around here, is turning the car too hard into a turn, which will make the front wheels slide across the road and overheat the tyres. And generally they don't jam the brakes on like they do in a short distance race. They have to feather the brakes and press their foot on them rather than jam them on. And all this sort of business you see here where they try to stay on the circuit, if they get off onto those gravelly edges, that's how people get punctures. It's not because somebody drops something on the track itself. They just wander off the circuit and pick up a rock, and next thing they're off because they've got a flat tyre.
In other words, smooth lines, minimum brakes, and just slide around the mountain?
Absolutely. It's one of the things you hear many, many years ago. The chat used to be here, oh, wash the speed off, wash the speed off. These days, because of the involvement with James Hardie, the braking situation isn't the sort of drama it used to be. In other words, the blokes can use the brakes for 1,000 k's and they don't wear out. So we've got a happy balance now where a driver can use his brakes hard and not throw the car sideways and wear the tyres out. So things do change from minute to minute.
Okay, John, thanks a lot. That was car 42, the Moffat Mazda, going past with Greg Hansford at the wheel, and as you heard Alan Moffat say, Greg's going to handle the car from here on out, and he's well placed just in behind the leaders. Should anything go wrong with them, they'll be there champing at the bit when the checkered flag comes out. We'll return to Mount Panorama in a moment for more of the action.
Welcome back to the James Hardie 1000 at Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Cars bunching up as they come down Conrod Straight. We're following car number 35. That's the Goodyear Car Owners Club entry, Ron Gillard and Mark Gibbs. They also have been running very, very well here today. They've just made it up into 9th position. They were very, very strong in their earlier outing at Amaroo Park. And once again, just by conserving and doing all their pit stops correctly. So car number 35, Ron Gillard and Mark Gibbs in the Mazda RX-7 Rotary, running strongly indeed. And here he comes up on the inside of Hell Corner, not far back behind him, Prince Leopold Von Bayern and Denny Hulme, the black BMW, with Denny Hulme at the wheel.
Looks like someone's been doing a little panel beating or panel removing on that Ron Gillard Mark Gibbs RX-7. If we look on the right-hand side, it's missing that front right fender and the back left one as well.
Certainly hasn't made any difference to the performance. I think what we might do now is, courtesy of Castrol, update for you the Group A positions. We had a little problem last time we showed. That's more like it. Car number 61, Jeff Hallam and Armin Hahn in the Rover Mobile entry, leading. Second spot being held down by Denny Hulme and Prince Leopold Von Bayern. And of course we have Golson and O'Donnell in third. Then the Capri of Bo Seaton and Don Smith, and then Kraft and Gryce running back in 5th spot. So Hallam and Hahn very much in control of the Group A situation at this time. And from Group A to the Group A BMW. Coming down, dropping into the right-hander.
Now outright 15th.
And from the BMW, here is the pit stop with car number 05, Larry Perkins coming in. And it would seem now that Peter Brock is going to do the last in. Down to Cole Young.
Thanks, Mike Raymond. Yes, Peter Brock's getting in. Larry Perkins out of the car for this final pit stop. 4 new tyres going on the 05 Commodore and 2 churns of fuel ready to go. But very quick pit work here once again from the Peter Brock team. It's become a very big thing of their race today, with Larry Perkins strapping him in. The door is shut. Peter Brock's just shutting the door, just waiting for the pit signal for Peter Brock to drive out of the car. But another very slick pit stop from race leader Peter Brock. For more information on the race, it's back to Gary Wilkinson in our pit studio.
Indeed. Thanks, Colin. Yeah, we just saw the Group A update just prior to Peter Brock's pit stop, and I got John Davenport here from Austin Rover, and he's all smiles.
Yes.
You've been looking closely at the lap chart, but you've got no worries, I don't think, have you?
Well, I don't think so. Our lead car with Jeff Hallam and Armin Hahn is well in the lead of Group A by about 4 laps. And they're just moving now into the top 10, I think. Top 10 overall.
Disappointment for Soper and Dixon, of course.
Well, yes, but they're still running, and they're 7th overall in Group A, so that's not bad.
The future of Group A in Australia, based on what you've seen here today?
I think it'll be very good. I mean, the standard of preparation of all the Australian cars is very high, and I think once they get to grips with the new regulations, that you're going to have some very close racing here.
The big selling point has been that it's now an FIA standard category, and will we, in fact, do you think, see overseas drivers and cars flying in lock, stock and barrel to race here?
I think you probably will, yes. Certainly to the James Hardie race. Whether you'll see them in all the other races in Australia, I don't know. But certainly we've been very impressed by our trip here.
Well, the word was that, dependent upon results here, the Rover team might be campaigning fairly extensively over the next 12 months in Australia. Are we going to see that or not?
You better give me another 35 laps and then I'll tell you.
Okay, thanks very much. John Davenport. Right now back to Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Gary. John Davenport looking happy and with good reason. A little bit of bad luck with Ron Dixon earlier in the day, running off and then dropping a lot of time.
Of course, they weren't happy earlier in the week either, Mike, when they thought that those speed humps in pit lane were just going to be too high for their Rovers. But I think they've found that they can get over them with just enough space to without causing them any problems. I think that would be furthest from his mind at the moment, as both his cars do extremely well in Group A. And, he was at one stage headed for a full confrontation with the ARDC over the height of those humps. The Rovers would, I'd say, be the lowest slung cars taking part in the James Hardie 1000 this year. And that's partially aids their great handling. Ground clearance is an aspect of Group A specifications which is free. In other words, they can lower the cars as much as they like, but of course they've still got to get over those speed humps. The lower the car, the better the handling. And the Rovers handle pretty nicely.
Great scrap going on here. Cabbage looks to the outside, and there's Barry Seaton just ahead of him. That car is beautifully turned out too. We'll deal with that shortly. Cabbage at this stage trying to get past Bo Seaton, who is 4th in the Group A class, brand new car. First run here at Mount Panorama, and they couldn't have picked a better combination than two experienced veterans of Mount Panorama. Bo Seaton, who has his son racing here today, raced here last year, and they look like being also a front runner in Group A next year with this Mustang. They come up towards the GTX bed. There goes Seaton, right behind him. In car number 30, Tony Cabbage, John Duggan.
Mustang, of course, a name synonymous with pretty speedy cars. They've got that image of being very fast vehicles.
I think everyone will discover that come the Australian Touring Car title for next year. Just look at this for scrap though. They've both honed in on this Falcon Donnelly's car, and they both pass it. One coming up behind them quickly. If you want to notice the speed difference, you follow these two drivers across the mountain. You just see who's gaining on them.
When they reach Conrod, Mike, who have you got your money on?
Well, they've been close like this for the last 2 laps. Hard to say.
Watch them both as they handle the Dipper and the S's. And both are taking pretty tight, tidy lines as they approach Forest Elbow and again Conrod Straight.
This will give you a fair indication, dropping down into Forest Elbow now. Which goes through. He's still trailing Barry Seaton, and here comes one of the Group A mobile Rover Vitesses. It goes past the Mazda and now starts to move right in on Barry Seaton. He's swinging to the outside of the course and passes Seaton, and once again the Mazda finds its legs, keeping in mind it's a Group C car. But just how quick and how much potential have the Rovers got? That was a fair indication. Now watch this on the brakes. Group A car. And at the bottom of Conrod Straight along Pit Straight. So the Rover is keeping its end up very, very well indeed against the outright cars. We'll take a break and return live to Mount Panorama. And welcome back to Mount Panorama. A quick pit stop here for the 6th place car. The two independents from the ovals, that's Barry Graham and Brian Callahan in the Callahan Pavers entry. Ford Falcon V8, car number 47. And boy, are they running strongly here today. They started from 21st position and at last count were up in the top 6. So their car is running very, very strongly indeed.
No longer in contention though, unfortunately, is car 44, the RX-7 of Peter McKay and Graham Moore. The Ghostbusters RX-7, well, some evil spirit has got into the engine and cooked it on lap 136. And bad news also for Brian Thompson and John Mann. Their Camaro has problems with the differential and looks like it's out of the race as well.
And there's Brian Callahan. Good running today from Brian and also from Barry Graham. Let's go down for an interview with Barry, I believe, with Cullen Young.
Thanks very much, Mike Graham. And Barry Graham are running in the top 10. A good performance.
Yes, we've got our fingers, toes and everything else crossed. The car's running beaut. I think we're running 6th and, you know, we're just hoping we can finish from here on in.
Well, both you and Brian are old Speedway hands. What's it like running around Mount Panorama in a big Falcon V8?
It's pretty much Speedway at the moment. It's pretty slippery out there with using plenty of opposite lock. But, no, it's one hell of a racetrack and we've had a pretty good day and let's hope it finishes that way.
Any problems with the car?
No, none whatsoever.
Okay, that's the scene from in the pits with Barry Graham. Back to Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Colin. They must be delighted to be running so highly. And obviously trouble-free, which is good to hear. Time to update the James Hardie for the last hour of action here at Mount Panorama. Into hour 6 of the great race. And Dick Johnson, who had his problems, finally made it back onto the racetrack. However, it was to be short-lived episode for Dick because not only had he worked his way back up into about 7th or 8th on the grid, and unfortunately an axle broke, and that was the end of Dick, back into the pits. One car running strongly coming right up through the field is the Daily Planet entry, car number 33, driven by Mike Bergman and Bob Stevens. Consistency paying off for them as they continue to make their way up into 9th position on the field. Dick Johnson finally coasts to a halt in the pit area. His 84 race is over. A little excursion there for the number 60, Steve Soper, Ron Dixon, Mobile Rover Vitesse. Pictures coming from the Racecam Mark III camera in the JPS BMW. It was close racing, as you can see here. Dixon getting the signal to pass on the inside. Alan Moffat, how long since you've seen Alan with a smile on his face at Mount Panorama? They're looking good, working their way up in the pack. An agitated John Harvey trying to convince crew members to get with it during a pit stop. David Parsons going back in the car and running 3rd at the moment. Fred Gisler, Goulburn, always a strong runner at Mount Panorama, also making the top 10, starting well down the field. Taking time out for a breather before getting behind the wheel, Peter Brock even had time to talk to Dick Johnson. One of the most consistent drivers at Mount Panorama this year, Ron Gillard and Mark Gibbs in the Goodyear Car Owners Club car, still running strongly. And for precision pit work, watch this. Larry Perkins in, Peter Brock out. And they still lead the great race for 1984.
And the race continues. We're watching Brian Callahan as he makes his way down through the S's. Once more, Barry Graham, his co-driver, and they are an extremely happy pair. I think you could tell by the look on Barry Graham's face just before that update that not even he expected to do as well as this. They're in 1, 2, 3, 4, 6th position, and with probably under an hour to go in the 1984 James Hardie, no one would dare suggest that they can't move up another place or two and finish very creditably indeed. Because they're on the same lap as Barry Lawrence and Alan Brown in a Commodore. Now, if they can just narrow that gap a little and sneak in ahead of them, 5th place would be a mighty effort from them, because they're, as we mentioned, better known as speedway drivers. But a couple of the parts of this track are very slippery indeed. They've mentioned Forest Elbow as one of the areas, and Hell Corner the other. Pretty slippery, so maybe they're feeling a little bit more at home here. It's a little bit like a speedway. Slippery on the track because we've had a number of accidents, a number of people spilling oil and water on the track. So it's created a couple of trouble spots. And this time of day, anything can happen with the shadows falling across the track and drivers getting a little tired. And make sure that they don't get into trouble where those spillages have occurred.
Might be time to update how all the cars are running on the track as we call in our Castrol scoring service. That's the grid, how they're running on the racetrack in the James Hardie 1000, courtesy of our Castrol scoring service.
Did you notice there, Mike Raymond, that Group A cars are running 12th and 14th outright, 61 the Rover and 62 the BMW.
I liked a little side wager. I thought a Group A car would finish in the top 10.
Hey, it's not over yet.
Still a long way to go.
I think you might collect.
Well, there's some old drivers and some bold drivers in the race today. To check on one of the youngest, though, let's go back to the pits and to Pat Welsh.
Thanks, Mike. Well, I certainly have got one of the youngest rookie here in the race today, Craig Harris, and they're going exceptionally well, Craig.
Yeah, the car's going really good, Pat. We haven't got a problem with it at all. All we're doing is just circulating the finish.
What do you think of your first look at Mount Panorama?
It's one hell of a circuit. It's very tight across the top, but very good, and I enjoy driving on it.
What's been the driving stints today? Have you had long behind the wheel?
I've done 2 35-lap stints, and Alf's done 2, and he's just going out to finish off the race for us.
Well, you've had a great hand with you, Alf Grant. He'd be able to teach you a trick or two.
He certainly has, and he's taught me a hell of a lot about the circuit. He's taught me how to drive properly around the top of the circuit and how to conserve the car.
I think you're sitting pretty close to 10th at this stage, too. That's a great performance.
It certainly is. Considering we started on 42, I think it's really good.
OK, Craig, congratulations, and I'm sure we'll see you back here again next year.
Certainly will.
Thanks, Craig. Back to you, Michael.
OK, Pat. Following the cars across the top of the mountain, car number 47, still showing on our board back in about 5th or 6th spot. So they've been able to maintain that during their pit stop. And the Grant and Harris car, which of course is number 27, started out of position number 42 and now running 11th on the grid. So the great race continues. Will Peter Brock do it again and make it win number 8? We'll just have to wait and see. We'll be back shortly at Mount Panorama. Mount Panorama. You see the sun now, the top of the mountain, really giving the drivers some problems as they race up to the top of the hill.
As if they didn't have enough to worry about. Sun in their eyes. And that, when you get a few bugs on the windscreen, can really impair your vision and make things difficult.
Ray Golson and Grant O'Donnell in the Alfa Romeo GTV6 was the car being passed there by Denny Hulme, passing Denny at the same time as the dealer team Commodore racing across the top of the mountain.
You think he's in a hurry?
I think he wants to get this 162 laps over and done with.
This is our surviving race cam in car 62, a Group A car.
I guess that says something about reliability, doesn't it?
Certainly does.
I dare say we'll have 3 race cams in Group A next year.
Well, and there goes the other Holden dealer team car. Using all the track. Down Conrod Straight as the BMW once more.
Denny Hulme takes quite a wide line down Conrod, doesn't he, compared to some drivers?
We're sitting about middle of the road now.
A lot of drivers tend to stay right over on the left, the best line, particularly if there's a bit of breeze.
They also say that keeping well over to the left, you don't take as big a jump over those humps. Keep the tyres on the road a little better.
Brakes down through the gears and into Murray's corner at the bottom of Conrod. Denny Hulme has seen this point a few times today. Getting a little weary, I would say now, especially the eyes would be tired.
We've had some marvellous pictures. A whole new mention of following the James Hardie 1000. We've been inside talking to the drivers. We've actually spoken to a couple of them and had the camera outside in the front of the car.
Well, we've had comments from 4 different drivers.
Oh, no, there's a bug. Just didn't make it.
One of the big Commodores is looming large in the rearview mirror of Denny Hulme at the moment, and that'll be car 21. The Lusty brothers entry, Graham and John. There they are. Yeah. Coming up hard on the heels, as I said, of Denny Hulme. And rookies too at Mount Panorama, the Lusty brothers, and so all the more merit to their performance.
Yes, they've attacked this race with one thing in mind, just to finish if they could, and I think they were aiming for maybe a top 12 finish.
They're not far off it. 15th outright on the track at the moment.
And started from position number 35 in the 64 car field. So they have good reason to feel satisfied. They've done a great day's work.
It looks like he's on the same lap as the BMW. So if he can get in front, he'll actually displace him in outright position.
Yeah, you're quite right.
Don't forget, if you're enjoying our telecast of the James Hardie 1000, keep in mind the video cassette highlights of the great race for 1984 will be available soon from Syme Home Videos. I'll keep you informed on the 7 Network.
Well, just as we see a lot of cars drop out of this race, some of them are able to be repaired. We're happy to tell you that John Bundy and Norm Carr are back on the track in their Mazda after some problems. So it speaks volumes for the quality of the backup that these teams bring with them. But they can really have major problems such as broken gearboxes, differential problems, and give them 40 minutes and whip in another one and get back out there because they just so desperately want to finish. Be out there when the checkered flag falls, even if it means they're not amongst the place getters. There's a certain amount of honour just in finishing.
Heading up to Mountain Straight, look at the traffic. In amongst
there
all
were that
of
many
this.
cars left.
Looks like they've all decided to race together. And in amongst them all is Cullen Bond, who has the Alpha GTV back out on the racetrack again. He's in the thick of it, as you can see. Cullen Bond, one of the veterans of Australian motorsport. It's got 4 wheels on it. Cullen Bond can drive it. Let's have a look at some of the highlights of his racing career.
I don't think we're going to fit him in the duration of the telecast. Cullen's into everything. Loves the water, sailing and jet skiing, but motor racing, of course, is the first love. Now into the Group A category in the Alfa Romeo GTV6. Career record. As I said, you're not going to get it on this page. Just take a read from the top down. Australian Rally Championship, 3 times Touring Car Championship. He loves winning. Dislikes walking back to the pits. I saw him do that recently in a race where he had to go for a can of petrol. It'll be a long hike at Mount Panorama if that ever happened to you.
You're right there, Gary. Interesting to see not only on the stats, thanks to Data Sport, of both Cullen Bond and also Peter Brock, but both drivers claim the biggest influence on their racing careers is in fact Harry Firth.
2 very successful men, Cullen Bond and Peter Brock, so Harry Firth, well, he must have something.
Harry still here at Mount Panorama, still enjoys his motor racing. Here's a fellow who does too.
Following Cullen Bond along the main straight and not far up ahead of him, the two dealer team cars running nose to tail up Mountain Straight.
Cullen Bond could tell you an interesting story when he was rally driving in New Zealand. His navigator got out of the car, slammed the door. Because there was a partition between Cullen and his navigator, he thought that the navigator was getting back in when actually he just got back out. So Cullen took off. It was about 4 or 5 kilometres before he realised he was on his own. There's such problems at Mount Panorama. No need for a navigator on this track.
There's a lot of cars out there, but there's a few still in the pits. Let's recap the cars that haven't made it. Thanks to Digital for supplying us today with all of the information relevant to the great race, the James Hardie 1000. We're following Bondi down off the mountain. Campaigned Group E in the Super Series this year. The same car actually, now in Group A trim. One person I feel would be over the hoop as far as where they're running at the moment on the track is Warren Cullen, who has Alan Jones out on the racetrack at the moment. They are running second in the field, and let's cross down to the pits.
Thanks very much, Mike Raymond, the Kmart Commodore, Alan Jones and Warren Cullen in second place at the moment. Warren, Alan's out on the track. What's the strategy for the rest of the race?
Well, hopefully he'll be able to complete it without any more stops. We won't really know that until about 3 laps to go. We'll just have to see what the fuel gauge says.
Is there a fuel consumption problem?
Well, it hasn't been up to date, but you know, as the engines get a little tighter, they tend to wear a bit more, or use a bit more fuel rather.
I noticed your crew's got tyres and everything here ready to go. Are you expecting Alan to come in unexpectedly?
Well, we're not expecting him to. We'd prefer he doesn't, obviously, but you know, we're not taking any chances.
Okay, you're coming in with Alan Jones in this race. Is a lot better performance than the previous teaming with Jones.
Yeah,
okay, that's the scene in the Warren Cullen pit area. Back to Mike Raymond.
Thanks, Cole. I don't blame him for not wanting to talk about the bad days. Things are the good days.
Car number 13.
That's a little unlucky.
That's the big New Zealand man, Hoss Waswo.
Yes, and he's a little shy on horsepower at the moment underneath the Hardie Bridge. That is not the place to really pull up. He climbs from the car.
It's the big man himself too.
Going to climb over the fence. I don't think you can conduct your pit stops out there on the main drag. So Hoss Wasso of New Zealand has his problems. The dealer team cars running first and third, and they are separated only by Australia's former Formula One world champion, Alan Jones. We'll return in a few moments live to Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
Back at Mount Panorama, this is a Mitsubishi Starion, one of two entered in the James Hardie 1000 for 84, and the only one to survive. Kevin Bartlett has gone by the boards in his entry, and this is the Arnell brothers, Greville and Lyndon from Victoria. Three lots of brothers driving, and that must be a record, I think, for the race, and they're doing it well. Greville and Lyndon have campaigned in Group E cars and other categories quite successfully around Australia, particularly at Calder and Sandown in Victoria. And it's great to see them performing so well here in the James Hardie 1000. They've been here before, of course, and they know their way around. And obviously, they've given Group A a lot of consideration and have laid their plans very well for next year. And if they can finish the race and finish it well placed, they'll be happy.
They didn't have nearly the problems that Kevin Bartlett had in conforming to the Group A specifications. Reason being that, as Gary mentioned, they've been racing in Group E, so they had virtually the stock standard Starion to play with, and they weren't attempting the modifications that, shall we say, that Kevin Bartlett was trying to undertake. They weren't nearly as adventurous or as brave, shall we say, as KB was in taking on cams. And for Greville Arnell, no problems in making sure that his Starion conformed to specifications for Group A for 1984. Coming up behind him, another Group A car, Alfa Romeo Cullen Bond, car 70. In fact, three of them in line. It's the BMW chasing them as well. Bondi and Denny Hulme go past. Greville Arnell struggling a little to keep up with the sheer power that these other Group A cars have. Up Mountain Straight he comes. great credit to this team that the Stallion has held together so well. It's been a dominant vehicle in Group B racing this year, that's for certain. The shadows almost completely cover the cutting. Watch car 68, Mitsubishi Stallion, to the top of the mountain.
In the Group A category, the Rover continues to lead with Jeff Hulme and Armin Hahn ahead of the BMW, and that's the picture you're seeing at the moment from 62. BMW, Denny Hulme at the wheel. Then the 67 car of Ray Gulson and Grant O'Donnell, that's the Alpha GTV6. 69, Barry Smith and Don Smith in the Mustang. Car 65, next placed in Group A, John Craft and Les Gryce in a Capri. And then Alexandra Surplus and Bob Holden still out there and circulating in the Toyota Sprinter, holding down 6th spot in Group A. That's been a good performance. And of course with Christine Gibson and Glenn Seaton off the track in the Nissan Pulsar, Alexandra, the only surviving woman driver in the race. Let's go over to Pat Welsh in the pit area.
Thanks, Gary. Well, the pit's absolutely buzzing now about a possible 1-2 finish by the Holden dealer team. With me is John Harvey, and his co-driver David Parsons is driving magnificently on Mount Panorama at the moment, John.
Yes, he's doing an excellent job. The car had an oil pressure problem when I was out there, and I eased back a little bit. I wanted to make it to that scheduled pit stop, get some oil in it, which we were able to do, and he went out 1 minute behind Alan Jones. He's now got it down to 11 seconds. So there's a possibility of a 1-2, but I don't really count anything until lap 163.
You're not thinking about it all that much. What about Peter? Has he eased off the pace a little? He's got something like 3 laps on the field now.
Well, he's got 3 laps, and there's no point in straining the car at all at this stage, so he's eased right back and just cruising for a finish.
Nevertheless, that 1-2 finish would be a great way to finish Group C racing.
Well, we'd obviously like to do that, and I'd certainly like to see David overtake Alan and get to 2nd place. It's a possibility.
He's shown great potential with the team too, hasn't he?
Certainly has. He's done a great job for us this weekend and also at Sandown, and I'm sure that David's going to be with us for some time.
The fact that the 2 cars are running so well and so high up, it says a lot, doesn't it, for the preparation of the dealer team's cars?
Well, that's true, and that's probably related directly to Larry Perkins, who's sharing the car with Peter. He's in charge of our workshop and all our mechanics, and it's his expertise that shows.
Okay, John, best of luck with it. Gary, just before we go back to you, interesting news from the Graham and John Lusty camp. Car 21, the Commodore, they took on 4 tyres, 2 churns of fuel a couple of hours ago, and replaced the tail shaft, all in just 12.5 minutes, and now have clawed their way back up the field to around about 15th spot. So a fantastic performance by one of those 3 sets of brothers that you mentioned were in the race, the Lusty brothers, Graham and John. It's back to you, Gary.
Spot on, Pat. Yes, we were having a look at them just a minute ago, and in fact they're up into 14th spot at the moment. That's 73. Bob Holden at the wheel. It certainly doesn't look like Alexandra Surplus, but as I mentioned a moment ago, they've really done a great job to be still out there battling in the Group A category in 6th position, although Bob does look like he might be battling a little at the moment. I don't know whether he's got a problem with the car, but certainly a little slow across the top of the mountain. It'd be a shame to see them having come so far not to be able to continue, but he's a great campaigner, Bob Holden. He's been around for an age. Alexandra Surplus has a class win to her credit, of course, in the Australian Endurance Championship last season, and a very, very competent driver indeed.
Started from position 63 in the field and still circulating. That's great. As we follow across the mountain, just zipping by one of the Commodores on the outside. So the Group A cars are having a great outing here in the James Hardie 1000 this year.
Yes, that Commodore that slipped by, I think it might have been 28, the Barry Lawrence and Alan Brown entry, Mike, and that raises an interesting question, you know. Barry Lawrence in car 28 is in 5th position, right? He's been entered in this race twice before, but has never driven in the race at all before. So is he going to be the Rookie of the Year?
Be pretty close to it. Hard to... you could hardly have... no, there wouldn't be a person in front of him, I don't think.
But does the fact that he's been entered twice before count against him?
That would probably be up to the people who frame the rules for it, but if he hasn't started, he couldn't very well be classified as Rookie of the Year non-starter.
Mark Gibbs in car 35, he might be up for Rookie of the Year as well. He's there in 8th position.
Yeah, not much to choose between those guys on the track either.
Our thanks, of course, today go to the Digital Equipment Corporation for their assistance in bringing you the James Hardie 1000.
Yes, the ATN Bathurst computer system consists of a Digital Equipment Corporation. I'll tell you what it is. It's a PDP 11/23 plus computer. Write it down. It can handle 1 million characters of memory and 20 million characters of disk storage. The system has 26 serial data lines that can be used for connecting terminals or various graphic devices used in our on-air displays. Terminals are located up here with us in the commentary position for the retrieval of information on the drivers, and in the broadcast facility for control of the on-air displays of information at the discretion of the director. The computer system itself is located at our ATN 7 studios in Sydney.
And we return to race cam with Denny Hulme still at the wheel, car running perfectly, Group A BMW. Coming down to the end of Murray's Corner. So Denny Hulme looking good at this stage in the James Hardie 1000 for a place in Group A. More action to follow when we return live to Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
Welcome back to Bathurst and Mount Panorama. And we're watching right now Barry Lawrence and Alan Brown, the Commodore currently in 5th place. And this is certainly one of those cars that's just run a very measured race. Hasn't tried to do anything silly, smart or dramatic. Just hung in there. Good backup, sensible driving. They find themselves in the top 5.
Well, Recar, of course, have prepared some of the fastest cars around this mountain, let me tell you. Alan Gryce would agree with me there, because of he snatched pole position a couple of years ago, the Recar Commodore. they've gone out to finish in the Bayside Spares Recar entry. And finish they will, barring any sort of mishap, and they finish up very, very high at 5th spot, just right behind Alan Moffat and Greg Hansford in the blue and whites Mazda RX-7.
The car's looking surprisingly clean and unmarked by the number of scraps that we've seen here today. But, no panel damage, and must give them a certain amount of pride to know that they're probably going to finish the race with the car looking as pretty much as flash as it was when it started the race. Oh, some 6 hours ago now. Along pit straight it comes once more. Coming up behind the Craft Gross Group A entry, and should overtake that one along Mountain Straight.
One fellow who would be delighted with the way things have turned out for the Recar team would be Alan Brown, and our pitman Colin Young getting together now with Alan Brown. Watch the smile on his face. Take it away, Col.
Alan Brown, Barry Lawrence out in your car and going very well in 5th place.
Well, that's right. Not actually my car. It's the Roadways car. Matter of fact, it's car number 6 for Gryce Road last year. Barry and I really just leased the car for the weekend, and Barry's intending to buy it straight after the race. I'm sure he will now.
Alan, you're something of a part-time racer, and so's Barry. In fact, he's been entered here for 2 years, but this is the first race he's actually driven in.
Yeah, well, I'm sort of just do it for a little hobby, you know, and I've retired more times than I know what, but, you know, this sort of thing is so good. We just lurked around and look like we're coming 5th.
Well, you're lurking around in 5th place, and that's a very good performance.
Oh, it's good, and if, you know, the record is Recar, we've had a marvellous record here. We've always come up pretty high in this race.
Okay, Alan, thanks very much for talking to us. And, of course, Barry Lawrence out in the number 28 Commodore. And Barry Lawrence was the man who last year sold his Commodore to Ross Palmer, so Dick Johnson could take over a Falcon and run in this race. Back to Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Colin Young. Here comes Lawrence down Conrod Straight. Might get our Ortex radar people to gun up for us. Here's time.
Colin Young just talking with Alan Brown a moment ago. Lists one of his favourite pastimes at Bathurst is walking around the pits signing autographs. 260
Ks, not messing around at all on Conrod Straight. Now thanks go to Ortex for their radar times and passing them on to us. There's Lawrence. While up on top of the mountain, Denny Hulme continues his run after the Rovers for a win in the Group A category of this year's James Hardie 1000. The big crowd is still there. They're not leaving. And Hulme quicker each lap.
Setting a cracking pace as he dives down off the mountain. Second gear into third. Fourth gear now. In top for the run down Conrod Straight. The BMW 635.
Oh, there's the Barry
like
Jones.
Bob Morris entry, yes, the one with a gearbox problem that had to replace the gearbox, in fact. It's gone sailing past.
Look at the flame trickling out of the gears. Denny Hulme, 235 kilometres an hour that time down Conrod Straight. Facing the sun as they come along pit straight for the left-hander at Hell Corner. Well, the big interest in the concluding stages of the James Hardie 1000 rests with the driver of car number 8. He hardly needs any introduction to motor racing followers around Australia, and I refer to Alan Jones, and here is the man chasing him. Number 25, of course, David Parsons. Jones second on the road to Yes, wife taking care of things. Obviously delighted that Alan is up there and running very, very strongly indeed. So Alan Jones, second on the road to Peter Brock and the dealer team Commodore, with David Parsons in the second of the Commodores. The dealer team cars up into third, and was closing a few laps ago. The gap was 11.98. It's dropped to 8:01 and now back to 7 seconds. So 7 seconds is the gap between second and third.
It'll be interesting to see a man with Alan Jones's experience, just how he'll handle David Parsons as he comes up behind him. Must be aware that he's closing the gap. Alan Jones is able to hold him at bay, and over the next 15 minutes or so towards the end of the race. Alan Jones, of course, former Formula One champion.
We'll be able to gauge the gap. The last car you can see there is the Kmart Eveready Commodore, and 7 seconds behind is David Parsons in the second of the dealer team Commodores. Radar coming up on the Cullen Jones car, splitting it at 266 kph. Very quick indeed. No sign there of David Parsons as yet. But Alan Jones soldiering on in Warren Cullen's number 8 V8 Commodore.
7 laps has David Parsons to try and catch Alan Jones and pass him. Catching him is one thing, passing, I would say, would be another thing altogether. Unless he has the legs and can just stream by down Conrod Straight. We're watching Alan Jones climb the mountain once more, though.
No sign of the dealer team car there at the moment. Jones would be well aware of the buffer between himself and, of course, David Parsons. This man could be the spoiler to go out at Mount Panorama with a 1-2 for the dealer team. Would delight all of their followers, but they would have to be able, well, certainly Parsons is going to have to be able to pass a very determined and aggressive Alan Jones, who would dearly like to finish second to Brock here in the final Group C James Hardie 1000. And there is Parsons, so he is getting closer.
Yes, regardless, it looks like a 1-2-3 finish for the general, as Commodore's putting in a pretty strong showing today. And there is Alan Jones now coming down off the mountain. Forest Elbow and on to Conrod once more. Perhaps this time we'll be able to pick up the gap between himself and David Parsons. Around 265 kilometres an hour. Alan Jones can muster out of the Commodore, still at this late stage of the race. So the engine obviously running strongly. Under the bridge, under brakes. Inside the Capri of Kraft and Gryce.
So Alan Jones in car number 8 continues to sit in second spot. David Parsons still closing the gap, and Peter Brock still leading the great race. We'll return to Mount Panorama at Bathurst after this break. Welcome back to the James Hardie 1000 with about 4 laps remaining in the great race for 1984. And guess who's leading? The man who was leading the last 4 laps of last year's race, and many other. It's Peter Brock in the 05 dealer team Commodore heading up Mountain Straight, passing cars left, right and centre, setting his own pace. You might check out Peter Brock's average speed.
.158.7 kilometres an hour. You know, before he came here, Brock was saying he didn't think that the other teams, the other major teams, such as Gryce and Johnson, would have anywhere near the problems they did of last year, and that he thought he'd be pushed all the way. Well, he was pushed for a major part of the race, but once again, shocking luck has struck at the other teams, and Brock finds himself out there just about on his own. He's got a couple of laps gap on the field, and he's just looking very confident of making this number 8 for the mantelpiece and the Brock home.
And the last Group C touring car win for Mount Panorama. Well, Alan Jones, who is in second spot, still on the road. Behind him, David Parsons, injured his arm here during the week, and the details of that will call in Colin Young.
Thanks, Mike Raymond. Alan Jones has had a well-kept secret during the James Hardie 1000. Injured his arm during practice and, in fact, has required painkillers during the race. I've just spoken to Alan's wife, Beverly, and she's only just told me that her and Alan are the only people that know about it. And, in fact, during his break before his second driving stint, he had a second pain-killing injection for his arm. So Alan Jones struggling to the finish with a sore arm. Now it's across to Pat Welch in our pit studio.
Thanks, Cole. Well, it doesn't matter how Alan Jones' arm is at the moment. John Shepherd, we were having a chat a minute ago about what he'd be doing to that car and reacting to the pressure from young Parsons, and you said he'd be absolutely wringing its neck.
Yes, that's exactly what he is doing, because he's a bit light on for brakes. That's the reason why, well, I don't say necessarily the whole reason why, but it's part of the reason why he's been caught up. And in fact, I think if the dealer team car does catch up with it, we're saying that he won't be able to pass him. I think he will whistle past him under brakes, because Alan is very short on for brakes, and he's struggling along to the finish, and he's losing a second a lap with whatever number of laps to go. So it's a very close thing, and in fact the pit walls line with everyone out there wanting to have a bit of a look at what's going on. It's really excitement for them.
It's the classic youth versus experience battle, isn't it?
Yes, yes, and I think it'll be real good stuff to see what happens if they do get together.
Well, John, just before the race finishes, let's get your overall view on proceedings today.
Unfortunately, and this would possibly come across wrong, I think it's a pity in some ways that Brock has won it again, and I don't mean that any disrespect to Peter, because he deserves to win it, but he's won it so many times. I think people would tend to be getting shattered by the number of times he's done it to them. But they still seem to come back, which is great, because in fact, if they didn't, this spectacle wouldn't be what it is at the moment. So, and as I said, I'm quite sure people will misinterpret what I said. I really don't begrudge Peter his win, because he deserves it and knows that that's why he keeps winning all the time, because he deserves to.
Well, we've had a good look at the fans out there on Mount Panorama this afternoon to know that they all love him. And there's the Marlborough flag starting to really wave at the moment. The Holden dealer team flags wave at the moment. So they're expecting the Peter Brock victory, which should come very shortly. Mike Raymond, it's back to you.
Thank you, Patrick. Dropping down into the boat, Peter Brock in the Dayglow red and white Commodore, heading down to Forest Elbow, and he's in good shape, as he always is here at Mount Panorama. Doesn't back off the pace, keeps it up, a solid pace. Probably trying to determine how David Parsons is going in the rear gunner department, whether or not he can get by Jones and they can have their last hurrah at Mount Panorama with a 1-2 for the dealer team and their Commodores.
Yes, I'm sure they'd like to finish that way. Peter Brock, he's a man with a sense of humour, but a man with a very serious attitude towards racing. And if he can accomplish that 1-2, I'm sure that'd satisfy him tremendously.
Well, there's no way Jones is going to quit. He's driven Formula One Grand Prix cars with all sorts of injuries, but oh, dearie me, in for a pit stop, is it, with Alan Jones? I don't think they have too much of a buffer over David Parsons. No, it wouldn't appear that way. And the Jones car is into the pits. As it sits in the pits, Harvey and David Parsons' car now moves up into second.
Some frantic work going on under the bonnet. Doesn't look as though it's the brakes they're attending to.
Well, if they were hoping for a 1-2, it's coming good for them in the final couple of laps of this race. By our estimation, about 2 laps remaining for the James Hardie 1000. And a 1-2 certainly now on the cards for the dealer team. Peter Brock, Larry Perkins, John Harvey and David Parsons. Let's go to Colin Young in the pits.
Frantic work on the Alan Jones car. Mick Webb, the chief mechanic, has just got the engine running again. They're bolting down the bonnet and Jones is ready to go out to complete the final laps in the Kmart Commodore. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Colin. Well, that was bad luck indeed. An unexpected pit stop, and it must have been pretty bad, whatever it was. Here he comes. Headlights blaring. 0-5. Just taking it quietly. And you wouldn't want to bet that maybe Peter Brock has just eased off the pace for the last hurrah at Bathurst. If they are going to have a 1-2, it's going to be side by side. Well, it's going to require a very determined bid from David Parsons, if that is the case, because Parsons is already on mountain straight going up towards the mountain, and Brock easing off the pace, and I can only say easing off the pace because that's what I think he's doing, because under normal circumstances and under racing conditions, Peter Brock would not be allowing all those cars to go past him. But he's a showman as well, and he likes plugging the product. He has enough edge over everyone else. He only has his backup car, the second of the dealer team cars, running in second. So with such a clear edge over the rest of the field, just having a look around, not running interference for anyone, and I would think that's certainly what is on Peter Brock's mind. Receiving a signal from the pits. The victory salutes have started already for Peter Brock. Coming up to GTX Bend for the final time. Just easing off the pace, still hanging back, looking for David Parsons, wherever David might be, but he's still well back, and unless Brock throws the brakes on and waits at the top of the mountain for him, because Parsons should be going past the pit area very shortly. Peter Brock, 0-5. Coming up through the cutting. They just wait for the reception that he'll receive on top of the mountain from all the fans that have assembled up there. They're waving us out. Look at the fans out on the hill waving the banners, the Australian flag. Go Commodore, go. Parsons just goes past the pit straight now, so Brock's going to do this one by himself. Acknowledging the cheers and moving off to the left-hand side of the road to allow those other cars still to continue uninterrupted, and I say that's exactly what Peter Brock's waiting for David Parsons to try and form up so they can go 1-2 across the mountain. And the crowd really giving Peter Brock a send-off. The last trip of the V8 Big Bangers, as they're called, the Group C touring cars, and Brock has done it again. 8 wins at Mount Panorama. I think the mayor of the city might even call this Mount Brock after today, because this man owns this course. Through Forest Elbow for the final time, acknowledging the cheers of the crowd, waving back to the marshals, Peter Brock. Comes down Conrod Straight for the final time. The Dayglow red and white V8 Commodore. It has run superbly all day here at Mount Panorama. All the rival pit crews leaning across the pit wall, ready to salute this champion. And what a champion he is on this particular course. The final time. Brock still, I believe, waiting for Parsons. It'd be a tragedy if he fouled the plugs up and couldn't start. But I think Peter Brock has got everything well and truly in hand. Here he goes over the hump. Slowing down. It's going to be the slowest visit to the checkered flag ever for Peter Brock. And he is waiting on the inside. Here he comes. Don't say this wasn't orchestrated. A 1-2 for the dealer team. Peter Brock in 0.5 comes across the line to win the 1984 James Hardie 1000. Second place will go to his dealer teammate David Parsons in the number 25 car. And in third place, provisionally, will be Alan Moffat and Greg Hansford in the blue and white RX-7. Well done, Peter Brock. 8 in a row. And he's orchestrating where Parsons should park behind him. Well, Larry Perkins, delighted. Peter Brock's wife there also joining him at the celebrations. The last hurrah for Bathurst in the Group C touring cars, and a 1-2 for the dealer team. What a tremendous result. Pandemonium in the pits. There'll be plenty of celebrations going on here at Mount Panorama, particularly with the Commodore fans who came here to watch a 1-2, and they've seen it today. Provisionally third, as I said, will be Alan Moffat and Greg Hansford in the RX-7. Fourth place to Alan Jones in car number 8 with Warren Cullen. Then number 28, Barry Lawrence and Alan Brown. Behind them, car number 10, which of course was the rusty French car, the Commodore V8. And behind them, Brian Callahan and Barry Graham in car number 47. The two dealer team Commodores return where they'll be impounded, checked out for engine size capacity, as will all the place getters here at Mount Panorama. There you can see the crowd streaming down to the fences. They've watched another great race and a great drive by both Peter Brock, Larry Perkins, David Parsons and John Harvey. Peter Brock fans are everywhere. They're already preparing to spill out over the course to stand beneath the presentation dais at the James Hardie Centre and acknowledge their man. So Alan Jones across the line. The Mazda finishes in third place. Alan Jones and Warren Cullen finish in fourth. So 3 Commodores in the top 4, split only by the Mazda. There's scenes of jubilation. Everyone standing to acknowledge a great drive by Peter Perfect, Peter Brock, the winner of the 1984 great race. We'll take a break and then return live to Mount Panorama.
There is plenty of time for the car hasn't got yet up to the victory zone. Time now. Congratulations. Yeah, that's right.
Could you do it?
Yeah, they're coming through that way. Might be an idea if that's
Welcome back to Mount Panorama. And just look at the fans that have streamed across this course to welcome Peter Brock and Larry Perkins to victory lane this afternoon. Seen a race that had its fair share of incidents. However, Brock, who took the lead in the restart early this morning, received challenges from both Alan Gryce and Dick Johnson. They led at stages of the race. He's been able to come back, and they've won again. Bathurst 84, the Commodore hat trick. They already have the posters published. I would think the newspaper headlines being set in the bays now. But Peter Brock, there's the car, and the fans milling all around it, just down near the James Hardie Centre. Just looking by our records of the finish to this year's great race. Brock and Larry Perkins first across the line in the 05 Commodore. Second place to car number 25, Johnny Harvey and David Parsons. Third place to Alan Moffat and Greg Hansford in the RX-7. Fourth place to car number 8, which is Warren Cullen and Alan Jones in the V8 Commodore. Fifth place going to Lawrence and Brown in the V8 Commodore. Sixth place to Rusty French and Jeff Russell in a Commodore. Seventh place to Brian Callahan and Barry Graham in the V8 Falcon. Then in eighth place, Ron Gillard in the Goodyear Owners Club Mazda RX-7. Ninth place, a strong finish to Mike Bergman and Bob Stevens in an RX-7. 10th place going to 52, Fred Gisler in a V8 Commodore. Their provisional placings at this stage as we go to the presentation area and to Gary Wilkinson.
There have been some great races at Mount Panorama, but have there been any greater than this? I wonder, where are they? Peter Brock and Larry Perkins, the victors in 84 of the James Hardie 1000. Hey! John Ford, president of the Australian Racing Drivers Club, presents the winners' garlands. Peter Brock acknowledging the adulation of the huge crowd gathered down here on Pitt Straight. The champagne is traditional, and Brock is going to give it an extra shake for good measure. Another one for Larry Perkins. Stand by for a shower. And 05 gets a champagne bath, which it fully deserves. The crowd, the Holden fans, wild with delight. Well, after the garlands and after the champagne, I think the next thing in motor racing tradition is a congratulatory kiss from the Festival Princess, Carolyn McFarlane, for Peter Brock and for Larry Perkins. Thank you, Carolyn. And now the chairman of James Hardie Industries, Mr. John Reid, OA, presents the Perpetual Trophy.
Congratulations. Well done, Larry. Thank you very much.
That's the perpetual James Hardie trophy. The Australian Minister for Sport, Mr. John Brown, is here to present individual trophies both to Peter Brock and to Larry Perkins.
Congratulations, Peter. John, thank you very much. I'm not going to call you Mr. Brock. Wonderful performance, 8 in a row. And to you, Larry.
Thank you very much.
3 in a row. Yeah, 8 for you.
3 in a row for Larry.
3 for Larry. Congratulations. Thank you.
Peter Brock. Peter. That must have been about the slowest lap and a half, but the most satisfying that you've ever driven at Mount Panorama.
Yes, there was 2 reasons. Of course, young David Parsons was coming along in our number 25 car, finishing second, which was fantastic. I didn't quite work out what was going on for a while. The other thing was, of course, it's the last time I'll ever see these cars around this circuit. And I don't know, I just sort of didn't want to stop the race. In a way, I felt like driving around the top of that circuit and just doing it one last time.
Peter, you've always said that preparation is the name of the game, and whilst others had troubles, you had a pretty good run today.
Yes, everything went absolutely according to plan. They had a gear shift problem with the other car, which was a preparation problem, but not a major problem, obviously. It was still good enough to finish second. It was a credit to the boys. The car was prepared well. It was, I think Larry and everyone else in the team drove well all weekend, and our pit stops were absolutely first class. We were doing, well, the quickest was 27 seconds, I think, and our slowest was probably only about 30 or 31 seconds. And congratulations to the boys too, because that demoralises the opposition.
The last of the big bangers. It's a great way to go out, Larry Perkins.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, there's the scene at Mount Panorama.
A special thanks to our 5 mechanics. You know, they know how hard we've worked over the last 4 months, and all the abuse they've been copping for doing poor work or not doing poor work, it's all paid off in the end, and I can only thank them for getting us in this position.
We haven't finished with the dealer team yet because they took the Quinella. Where are they? Second outright. John Harvey and David Parsons. There they are, without a doubt, the 4 heroes of Mount Panorama today.